21 turns. The greatest ride in cycling. Today, one of the world's greatest stadiums is sold out to see the classic climb up Alpe d'Huez and to maybe get a glimpse of a man on pace to make history. Hello, everyone. I'm Adrian Karsten, welcoming you to ESPN's exclusive coverage of the 1995 Tour de France presented by Michelin. Here at the start line of stage 10 today, there is an agreement between the reporters and the riders, and that is that no matter what we predict or how well they perform, there are just some things you can't control. You know, we stood here yesterday and we talked about the fact that for the first time in 5 years, there are some riders who actually believed they could beat Miguel Indurain. And that prediction looked pretty good for a while as Alex Zula blasts off riding 60 miles by himself, building up a 5-minute lead. He actually owned the yellow jersey on the road. At that moment, Miguel Indurain took control of this tour. Minutes later, Zula looks over his shoulder, and now he's holding off Indurain. It was absolutely unprecedented. You know, Bernard Hinault and Eddie Merckx, the last men alive who have won this tour 5 times, were going down the course in a car together yesterday, and right at that moment, they looked at each other, shook their heads, and agreed. Never in the history of this sport have we seen strength like that. It happened on our first day in the French Alps. That effort of his yesterday has practically made the yellow jersey his to lose. The rising star of the Tour de France, the Danish champion Bjarne Riis. Dansk. Ja. The riders who jumped on Indurain's overall lead right off the starting line, Onse's Alex Zula, another Dane, Bo Hamburger, and Federico Munoz. But Lance Armstrong missed that breakaway bus. He spent a lot of energy trying to catch up, but couldn't. The Banesto bodyguards escorting Indurain, setting him up to spring him loose. But then a breakaway. As promised, Team Once went on the attack.
He now leads by 3 minutes and 35 seconds ahead of the main field. And Indurain is trying to limit his losses here. This has been a tremendous attack by Once, and today Alex Zula really has found his wings.
Yevgeny Berzin, the rookie learning how to ride this tour, was being taught a lesson at the back of the class. At the summit of Cormet de Roseland, Alex Zula leading by more than 4 minutes. Well, everything looked downhill. Then Indurain took control.
Indurain is causing a lot of trouble here, and I think, you know, slipping away from our picture has gone the Danish champion. I think Riis suddenly hit the wall and just dropped to the back of the group. He's gone from here.
Well, he decided, now I'm alone, I've got to give my own time trial. Zula's had enough time at the front, and he really has put the pressure on. He's going to ride his time trial now.
Zula had the yellow jersey on the road. It took him 3 hours to earn it and a fraction of the time to lose it. The end of one of Indurain's greatest rides ever.
He was over 5 minutes at the bottom, and it's going to be just around about 2 at the top, and he's grasping every second of it. Indurain knows he's under pressure this year, but they're not going to beat him without a great fight.
With that performance, Indurain multiplied his lead 6 times from the previous day. In second place overall, Alex Zula. His effort almost forgotten because of Indurain's. Keep your eyes on Bjarne Riis today. He's in third with thousands of Danish fans on Alpe d'Huez. You'll see the name Richard Virenque, the man right here, painted on the road up and down the mountains today. He's the favorite to hold on to the mountain climber's jersey. Right on his wheel, Team Motorola's Alvaro Mejia. He's a climbing teammate of Lance Armstrong. Now, Armstrong tried to make some moves of his own yesterday, but once again found himself in the exhaust of Miguel Indurain. He's learned more than a few lessons from that man.
I was just thinking I could do the descent a little faster and have a little breathing room for the next climb, because I knew that it was going to be hard. But then once I saw that Zula was gaining so much time, I knew that Banesto was going to start chasing hard from behind. So I just sort of rode on tempo and waited for them to catch me, which was not long, and they were going hard.
On a crystal clear day from Aime La Plagne to the summit of L'Alpe d'Huez, two men who have been up there many times, Phil and Paul.
Well, thanks, Adrian. You know, the party's already begun here on Alpe d'Huez, and on the way up this morning, I don't think I've seen so many people waiting on the climb as there is this year. But for Miguel Indurain, of course, his celebrations begun yesterday. We said yesterday that we thought a team could take him on. Paul, the Once team did what we thought. They attacked him, but they couldn't beat him.
Well, they couldn't, but don't forget that while Alex Zulu was at the front of the race, you had three other riders sitting back. And to me, Laurent Jalabert looked extremely good. We hardly ever saw Melchior Mauri. He was sitting back there waiting. So the Once squad did what we expected, and they may well try again today.
Well, it's even harder today. The climbs are steeper and they're tougher. And, of course, the finishing climb here is revered. Everybody wants to win here. Now, who's going to win?
Well, that's difficult for me to say because it depends on how the race develops. I would say logically it would have to be somebody like Richard Virenque, the climber, or even Marco Pantani, who showed yesterday that he's back in form. But this really is a shrine for the climbers, so I'd like to see a climber winning here.
Well, I'm a brave man. I'll go for Indurain.
Phil, if you're so courageous, why don't you come down off the mountain and saddle up alongside the man signing autographs, Miguel Indurain. A little Italian with the big ears and a good-looking haircut, Marco Pantani. He has the climbing talent to win today's stage. Alex Zula wearing the yellow cap of the leading team in the Tour, Team Once. You wonder what he has left after yesterday. At the base of La Plagne, 164 riders are ready for the signature stage of the Tour de France. After 88 miles and 2 exhausting climbs, they'll begin perhaps the most memorable 12 miles of their careers. The ascent up L'Alpe d'Huez.
ESPN's coverage of the 1995 Tour de France is presented by Michelin, because so much is riding on your tires.
There's a brotherhood of bicycling into which all these riders will have been initiated at the end of this day. Indoctrination begins 30 miles in on the Col de la Madeleine. Let's join Phil Liggett now.
Perhaps not surprisingly, on the lower slopes of the Col de la Madeleine, the field are all together, yet even at this pace, Paul, one or two riders have fallen back, including Jacques Durand, and the man who was eliminated yesterday, Frédéric Moncassin of the Novel team, is a Frenchman. But because he crashed on the descent and was eliminated by only 20 seconds, rather kindly, the referees let him back in the race today. Well, he's off the back at the moment.
You can see, even though the riders are going along on this climb at the moment, at a fairly small tempo. In fact, many riders already suffering at the back, dropping out. And that, I think, is because yesterday was such a tough stage with a lot of riders being eliminated.
Well, the King of the Mountains competition, we're now in the heat of the battle for that competition. The leader is Richard Virenque. He wears the polka dot jersey. Just to explain to you how the riders gain points in this competition, until we reach the Alps, there are only small hills sprinkled around northern France and Belgium, and they were categorized 4th and 3rd category. Now we're into the region of the 2nd category climbs, the 1st category climbs, and today all of the climbs are categorized, as the French say, outside category, which puts them even higher than a 1st category. They call it hors category. Now what that means is the points for the first man over the top today will be 40 points, and then the first 15 riders over the top all score points. And on the smaller climbs that we've seen earlier in the Tour, well, they only score points for the first 3 riders over the summit. In the case of a 3rd category climb, it's the first 6 riders. And the man with the most points, of course, at any time in the race, he wears the polka dot jersey. And that's on the shoulders today of Richard Virenque. And in fact, Virenque has said quite openly that his great ambition is to win the stage to Alpe d'Huez when he's wearing the King of the Mountains jersey. Well, he's got the jersey. All he's got to do now is win the stage.
Phil, for him to win this stage, Virenque would have to ride well all the way from start to finish. Starting was easy. Finishing is the problem. 100 miles total in stage 10, 3 mountains, and as Phil mentioned, they're all hors de categorie, which means their difficulty is off the scale. A lot of mountains, yes, but sprints as well. Jamaluddin Abdujaparov is trying to take the green sprinter's jersey from Laurent Jalabert. He won the first sprint at about 12 3/4 miles in. After the Col de la Madeleine comes the Col de la Croix de Fer, and by the time they climb L'Alpe d'Huez, an estimated 150,000 fans will cheer them up the mountain. French, Spaniard, Italians, it's really quite a sight.
And now they're into the final kilometre. There hasn't been an attack anywhere on the climb at all. But now the pace is visibly quickened, and the back end of this big peloton is now stringing out. Richard Virenque coming up alongside his teammate Laurent Dufault there in the polka dot jersey, looking for a chance to try and snatch the points.
Closing up a little bit further behind him as well now, Claudio Chiappucci, not sporting his helmet today because of the terrible heat on this race. The valleys are actually around about 30 degrees Celsius. That's a big problem for the riders on these mountain stages, the difference in temperature. But at the moment, Virenque is at the front. He's got his teammate there, Laurent Brochard, who's going to try and lead him out to try and keep maximum points. For the moment, he doesn't have anybody challenging him in that competition.
And Indurain just keeping out of trouble there, sitting around at the back, but not too far away from where he can see what's going on at the front. First time the riders climbed this hill was back in 1969, but nobody in the race this year has ever gone over the top of this mountain in first place before. But now the big sprint is starting, and Richard Virenque is going to consolidate his lead because this is the first big all-category climb of the Tour today, and there are 3 of them, and he's going to get maximum points first time over the top. As Virenque goes over the top first, and a good sprint there, but the others did not really challenge him. They more or less gave him a little present of that. A very slow start to the day at 24.7 kilometers per hour at the moment, just over 15 miles an hour.
But Phil, fast on the way down. They're going to hit 60 miles per hour. Still 2 more climbs to come. Back in a moment. Welcome back to stage 10. We're about 60 miles in, just short of the summit of the Col de la Croix de Fer, the second of 3 tough climbs today.
Well, as we expected, the attack started right down in the valley in the town of Saint-Jean-de-Maurienne, and that really is the base of the long climb of the Col de la Croix de Fer. And now we're something like 6 miles from the summit, and this little group has consolidated itself. And surprisingly, Paul, the riders placed in 5th and 6th overall. Laurent Jalabert lying 6th, and Ivan Gotti from the Gavies team lying in 5th place have made this escape.
Well, it's a superb move, and you know, it was actually set up by the Festina squad of Richard Virenque, because they launched a couple of riders clear at the bottom of the climb. That was Yecker and Dufault, and then they jumped across him one at a time, and then they formed at the front, and it's a dangerous move for Miguel Indurain.
Well, Indurain is heading the field at around about 1 minute and 35 seconds behind at the moment. 1 or 2 riders in between, some being dispatched backwards from this breakaway when the pace got a little bit too hot for them, and some trying to get up here. The latest riders to join us up here, Johan Brunel has just come up to us, and so too as Ivan Gotti, and before him it was Fernando Escartin. And the rest of the riders in this breakaway, Richard Virenque, Laurent Jalabert, Dufault, number 54, he's a member of Virenque's team. Simoni from the Aki team, Federico Munoz, who rode so well yesterday over the early climbs, and Alberto Elli. So that's the escape. And as we watch the leaders here, we have to tell you that Berzin has abandoned the race today when they passed to the feeding station. Berzin, who apparently is ill, decided to stop, and alongside him too was Maurizio Fondriest, a great Italian rider who really hasn't enjoyed this Tour de France at all.
I don't think he wanted to come to the Tour de France. He was a little bit obliged by the team sponsors, because Lampre were brought in at the last minute to this Tour de France. They were one of the 5 wildcards given a chance after their performance in the Tour of Italy, and that was an obligation by the Tour de France organisers and his own sponsor.
Well, Dufault setting the pace, then Munoz. Just behind, we've got the Once. Big tall rider, Brunel, but he's not a bad climber, and he's had a good Tour de France in the past. Seems to be recovered now from riding along with Miguel Indurain, as he did on Saturday on the stage in Belgium, down to the finish there in Charleroi.
Laurent Dufault, the Swiss rider at the front here, setting all the pace at the moment. He's doing a great job for Richard Virenque, and what they're trying to do is put Miguel Indurain under pressure. And they're doing a good job, because there's the latest time check, 1 minute 45 seconds. And Indurain at the back hasn't panicked at the moment, but it's all the time putting pressure on his team, because they have to stay at the front and they have to keep setting the pace.
Paul, re-identifying the rider to the left in the polka dot jersey, Richard Virenque, the 26-year-old Frenchman who won a heroic stage in the Pyrenees during the '94 Tour, on his way to the best climbers title in 5th place overall.
And look at him, he's smiling now. He knows he's got the victory.
It's a laugh smile or grimace with the pain right now.
I think that was a smile. He realises that he's got this stage in the bag, and it's a beautiful victory for him up at the top of the Pyrenees here, looking down over the valley below. He's saluting the crowd already.
popular Frenchman Richard Virenque hopes to take his place one day as a yellow jersey contender. But for now, he takes his place in our Coca-Cola racer profile. Back on the course, we're continuing up the second climb. Let's get back to Phil.
Well, we're over halfway up the climb now, and in fact this group has swelled and it might be getting a little bit too big, but here we have Alvaro Mejia from Motorola coming on board now. He's being trailed by Aparicio, the teammate of Miguel Indurain, who has not helped at all in the pacemaking, and he's been given a free ride up to the leaders. There are now 15 men in this front group, Paul.
It was quite an astounding thing to see on a mountain stage, because a lot of these riders are also members of teams who feel that they've got a chance of dethroning Miguel Indurain. Indurain has let so many riders go clear, and that is dangerous, because from this descent of this climb, they've got a long valley to go to reach the bottom of the Alpe d'Huez, and it will be very difficult to close down before the bottom of the climb.
So almost certainly now it's going to be a great showdown on the climb of Alpe d'Huez, because Jalabert and Gotti are in this breakaway and they're gaining time. Indurain's group is timed at around about 1 minute 45, 1 minute 50 seconds back, and there's nobody now in between his group and the leaders, because Mejia has just joined on the back.
He, one of the leaders coming up the top of this mountain, but the leaders in U.S. women's golf are showing up at the U.S. Women's Open starting tomorrow live on ESPN at 1 p.m. Eastern. The 1994 Women's Open champion Patty Sheehan is shooting for a total purse of $1 million. That all starts tomorrow live at 1.
My very first experience driving a car, I got a 49 Chevy out of my dad's wrecking yard, got it running, and went out and played in the desert in New Mexico. You can be the fastest guy out there, everything can be going your way, and then all of a sudden, poof, it's gone. You know, at 200 miles an hour, you're covering a football field per second. You have to figure out where you're going before you get there.
Before we took a break from the race, Phil reported that Yevgeny Berzin, the young leader of Team Gavis, had dropped out of the tour. This is a shot from our motorcycle cam coming right up behind him. Fatigued, with a fever, his tank just hit empty. So ends the 95 tour for the 25-year-old Russian rookie. Meanwhile, Miguel Indurain's Team Benesto is chasing down a big breakaway that includes Laurent Jalabert and Richard Virenque. Let's get back to Phil.
And as we expected, the slopes of the Col de la Croix de Fer has split the field to pieces. The attacks were started down in the valley by Laurent Brochard, and one by one riders reached him and built up a leading group of some 15. In that leading group, Ivan Gotti, the former leader of the Tour on the Gavis team, and the green jersey of Laurent Jalabert, both those riders lying 6th and 5th respectively overall. Then Alvaro Mejia joined him. This is the breakaway. Johan Brunel came here, but Miguel Indurain has reacted at the back when his lead dropped to, rather the deficit came 1 minute 50 seconds down. Then he started to counter with his team. As a result, he is now in a group of 15 riders chasing, and Tony Rominger has been dropped by the Indurain group.
Well, it appears that Rominger just cannot survive the Tour de France. The last couple of years, it really has put a lot of pressure on him, I think, being the #1 favourite coming into this event, and it may well be that psychological pressure that he just can't take.
And the list of abandons today has grown steadily. Now there are 10 riders out of the race today, starting with Mario Cipollini, who didn't start this morning. Already gone now, Eric van der Arden. Maurizio Fondriest abandoned at the feed at the same place, in fact, as Evgeny Berzin. Berzin apparently was ill all day yesterday, and he got as far as the feeding station today and climbed into his team car. Mark Boatsers has gone, Mario Chiesa's gone, Jackie Giron, the first leader of this Tour de France, has also given up today.
Phil, it's amazing. The climbers in this race just keep the pace going. In the Michelin race summary, Richard Virenque defends the polka dot jersey with 151 total points after winning today's first climb. Alex Zula is beating Miguel Indurain, at least in this category. And Big Bo Hamburger proving that a man over 6 feet can climb a mountain as well. More mountain climber points coming up on the Col de la Croix de Fer.
So, setting the pace for Festina and hoping that Richard Virenque will finish it off with more points on this all category climb, the second of 3 today in the Tour de France. Udo Bos seems to have found his legs today. He lost time yesterday, but the champion of Germany who rode so well in the mountains last year, has come good today. It is amazing how the form turns around in just 24 hours when you're in the mountains.
Some riders are just made for the Tour de France, and some riders you only see when they come to the month of July, because they spend the whole of their season preparing just for this one race, and that is a very difficult thing to do, and it's also a very dangerous thing to do, because you can lose a whole season if you come to the Tour and you don't perform.
This is the sprint for the summit now, and Richard Virenque is going for it again, so he's going to make it 2 out of 2, or is he? Little Munoz is going to have a go at him, but I think Virenque has plenty in hand. Munoz is second, and third over the top is Escartine, I think it was. So the 3 riders go through, but the group basically stays together. They've been racing for almost 4 hours today. And they're going to be coming over the top. It looks to me as though we've got one of the Banesto riders here in a spot of trouble.
That was Aparicio. He was dropped off the top there as we came into the final few kilometers of that climb, but that's not too bad, because at least when he comes into the valley, at least it gives Miguel Indurain another teammate to help him.
These riders shed by that leading group, but with the long descent they might well rejoin it before they go down to Bourg-d'Oisans, and then they'll start the climb of Alpe d'Huez. Looks like Beat Zberg coming up, the Swiss rider, and a very good finish in the Tour of Switzerland just before this race began. In fact, he's being picked up now by the Indurain group. Indurain just monitoring affairs. He knows that he's going to wait, I think, for the climb of Alpe d'Huez and then give us one of these spectacular chase downs. But as they come up towards the summit, the leaders are over the top. Beat Zberg leading through the yellow jersey group. 1 minute and 30 seconds back, Miguel Indurain and the field. So he's got a little bit of work to do on the way down if he wants to be with the leaders when they start the climb of Alpe d'Huez. And we'll be there as well. See you in a few minutes.
As we approach today's final climb up Alpe d'Huez, the Americans looking pretty good. Lance Armstrong has done a better job overall this year, climbing and time trialing. He's 36th overall. And Frankie Andreu in the top 10 early in the Tour has dropped back now, but he's no quitter. Count on him in Paris. Now back out on the course with Phil Liggett.
And this breakaway at the moment is still clear. There are 13 of them surviving. The passage now between the mountains heading towards Bourg-d'Oisans. The yellow jersey group is led by Indurain's team, Banesto and indeed Carrera, 1 minute and 20 seconds back.
Well, Indurain has played a superb game today. He let these riders attack him, and he never panicked at all. He kept all his team around him, and he's just kept that gap at exactly the same distance for the last 30 kilometers.
Ron Jalabert, one of the 2 riders with most to gain in this breakaway. The other one, in fact, is just behind him in the blue jersey there. That's Ivan Gotti. And Johan Bruneel offering Alvaro Mejia a drink. And Richard Virenque, the King of the Mountains leader, very well satisfied with the way this race has gone so far today. Maximum points on both climbs for him. And now they're on the flat valley road where the temperatures are at their hottest before they reach the small town of Bourg-d'Oisans, which is absolutely jammed to the hilt today with spectators watching the passage of the Tour. And tomorrow, of course, it will start in the town.
The impetus really seems to have gone out of this breakaway at the moment, and it's probably because they're thinking about what is facing them now. They've got a 13-kilometer climb to the summit of Alpe d'Huez, and the riders know exactly what it's like. Most of them ridden the Tour de France before. They know how difficult it's going to be, and they know that behind the race is really starting to speed up, because in fact this is Beat Zberg, one of the Swiss riders on the Carrera team, and he's working now with Banesto to try and bring the group together so that Marco Pantani, I think, would like to launch an attack.
And Paul, wouldn't he like to wear one of these jerseys? The yellow jersey in the back of Miguel Indurain, tailor-made for the man after yesterday's performance. Laurent Jalabert got a scare from Jamaluddin Abdijaparov as Abdu won both of today's time bonus sprints, but Jalabert wears it for now, and we profiled Virenque's talent in the polka dot jersey. Now the climb up the monster named Alpe d'Huez, the unofficial world championship for climbers. This is Mario Eli of Team MG, who leads the ascent. Phil?
This is the chase group led by Dufault.
Dufault has done an incredible job today for Richard Virenque, because he initially started this breakaway early on the slopes of the Col de la Croix de Fer. They pushed the effort all the way over the top and formed this group, which was originally 15 riders over the top there. He's done all that work, and he's still finding time to go to the front and chase for Richard Virenque.
And here's the ever-faithful Gerard Rouet coming back up to the front now for Indurain. Yesterday he made the pace for as long as he could before he blew and left Indurain to really save the day.
To give you an idea of just how much he tried yesterday, on that final climb of La Plagne, which is an 18-kilometer climb, 12 miles, he lost 26 minutes on his leader, Miguel Indurain.
Now Alberto Eli. The start of Alpe d'Huez is the steepest part of the climb, and they very, very quickly concede far down into the valley as they go up these hairpin bends. And it looks as though Eli has got the gap initially, but now his escape is being limited by the tempo riding of Johan Bruneel on the right. And also, I think at the back there, Paul, Mechir and Bolts have gone.
It looks as very much as if they have done, and all that is because of the work that's being done here by Laurent Dufault at the front. The gap at the moment is 15 seconds for Alberto Eli, but down the field, down the climb here, the work of Panesto really is starting to eat into the lead.
So a little bit disappointing for Motorola. They were hoping that Alvaro Mechir would climb up towards a top 3 finish in the mountains. He certainly seemed to have done the right move today when he joined this leading group with Aparicio, but I'm afraid he has lost ground on these early slopes. Maybe they've hit it a little bit too quick, but look at this now. This is a gap of 11 seconds Eli's built. 11 seconds on the mountain over the group he's just left is quite a big gap.
It is. It's awfully difficult to close down that 50 or 75 meter. And here it is, Paco Pantani, the man that I expected to attack, and he is gone, and he's followed there by Laurent Madouas, the Castorama rider. This man really is the most incredible climber I've seen in recent years.
Hit by a car 3 months ago, Paul. Here he is attacking the most famous mountain in cycling. That's the Tour de France. It is also stage 11, which we will bring you tomorrow. 124 more miles through the French Alps from Bourg-d'Oisans to Saint-Étienne. Coverage begins at 7:30 p.m. Eastern on ESPN, 11 p.m. on ESPN2. But to get to stage 11, you have to finish 10, which we will do when we return. The pros are climbing L'Alpe d'Huez, but there are a lot of amateurs out here today making the climb as well. And if they've made it to the top, they got a certificate. Sound familiar? Phil?
Well, you know, I also tried to ride Alpe d'Huez, and I gave up 2 miles from the top, so I got no certificate. But this man, I don't think anybody will ever climb it as quick as him. This is Marco Pantani, now on the lower slopes of Alpe d'Huez. He's still in pursuit of the breakaway, which has been clear since the top of the Col de Croix de Fer, and that breakaway is reducing in number. Mechir has been dropped for Motorola, so too Udo Bolt at Telecom, the German champion, and the gap is closing. Indurain's group we're looking at down here, we think is just over a minute behind the leaders, but Pantani has left the Indurain group and in about 2 kilometers has flown across to the leaders.
I think they're going to get an awful surprise when he comes up to this group, and you know what he will do? He'll try and go straight by them immediately and continue in his lone effort.
Magnificent piece of climbing by a pure climber. We talk of Lucien Van Impe and Federico Baramontes, the 2 riders who, 6 times each, won the King of the Mountains competition. They were real climbers too. But the others are strong men like Richard Virenque, but Pantani makes it look so easy. This is Ivan Gotti at the front now, the former leader of the Tour de France this year. Blown now is Johan Bruneel and gone backward. Pantani, relentless in his pursuit, is cutting his way through to the front.
And the riders you can see there just in front are the leaders of the Tour de France at the moment. This is Ivan Gotti. Ivan Gotti is being followed by Jalabert, and it looks very much to me as if Richard Virenque has cracked the man who is supposed to be the climber. Jalabert is a non-climber, and he's being able to drop Virenque on a climb. Now, this is quite stupendous.
Well, Virenque has had a second breath there, Paul. I think he's just nipped onto the back wheel of Jalabert. This is Escartine who's with them as well. Gotti on the right of our picture. Well, they were right, the Italians. They said you may not have heard of Ivan Gotti, but if we get into the mountains with him, he's a very good climber. He's proving that now. He's right there. And Escartine is thinking of attacking, but they better look over the shoulders, because it's not the yellow jersey of Indurain this time, but this is the most talented climber in the world, and he's onto the back of them as Gotti goes off the front.
Phil, the action on the climb up L'Alpe d'Huez is always some of the best of the Tour. Like in '92 when Andy Hampsten Perhaps the greatest moment in the Tour that year, the crowning moment in his career. The only American to ever win here, but he's not here this year because he gambled by changing from Motorola to Team Bonesta. He didn't make their cut. But he will always have his performance in '92 to hold on to. To the present, Indurain's right-hand man, Gerard Rouet. His commitment is such that he will sacrifice himself to keep his man in yellow.
Gerard Rouet continues at that nice little tempo. Indurain is hoping that he'll shortly be seeing the green jersey of Blanc Jalabert. He'll be totally unaware of what is happening on the climb. And we have seen Pantani rip away from that field and ride past every one of them. Now he's found himself a little bit more of a tough hombre here in Ivan Gotti, who is going to sit there as long as possible. Gotti has really blossomed in the Tour de France this year.
As soon as the incline increases, that's when Marco Pantani will make his move and increase the gas a little bit just to try and get rid of Gotti, because he knows the best way to win here would be alone, and it is such a risk if he was to drag Ivan Gotti all the way up here to the finish line, because then it would go down to a sprint, and that is very dangerous after a long stage like this.
But it won't happen now, Paul, because it's all over. The elastic has snapped, and Gotti too is now being dispatched back to the rest of the Tour de France. This man is now going up the mountain in true glory on Alpe d'Huez, where climbers have their moment of pleasure, and this rider is so nice to watch.
It's unbelievable. You see, he keeps that gear down all the time. Every time he goes into the corner, he accelerates quickly. He gets out of the saddle and sits down again, gets into his rhythm. Now all he has to do is time trial to the finish, and he really has got an incredible position.
I don't know if you can hear the applause. We're at the finishing line, of course, and they're watching the big screen here. They've now just seen Pantani, who's shed the last man. They've just given him a big round of applause, and the Italian flags are now waving at the finish. They don't think he'll be seen again now till he crosses the line, and I would say they're probably right.
Phil, the final miles on the climb of L'Alpe d'Huez, Marco Pantani trying to accomplish a first, his first ever stage win in the Tour de France. Miguel Indurain and Alex Zula side by side, chasing a number of riders on the attack, including the man in third position overall.
And there's Bjarne Riis, the first time we managed to see him, around about 55 seconds behind, and with him is Laurent Madouas. He is now ahead of the Indurain group, and he's trying to pick up Richard Virenque, Jalabert and Escartine. And in fact, he has done it. He's come flying up. He's now caught the three of them along with Madouas.
Well, that's a superb move by Bjarne Riis. I think yesterday he suffered in the mountains a little bit like one or two other riders because of the fact he's rode that superb time trial. He had the rest day, which really messes up a lot of riders because it changes their body rhythm, it changes their biological clock. But Riis has got his mountain legs on him today, and he's trying to get up there. But up the road, 50 seconds at the moment is the lead of Marco Pantani, the lone Italian.
And in between the two groups, we've got the other Italian, Ivan Gotti. Now, Indurain, it looks as though he's having to take control of things himself, because he won't want Bjarne Riis to get too much out of this. Don't forget, he's now got the riders in second. No, let's start again. He's got the riders in third, fifth, and sixth ahead of him on the road now, and he will not like that.
Well, Escartine has cracked, and the man setting the pace now is Bjarne Riis. But notice how Laurent Jalabert, every time there's an acceleration, he can go with the move and he stays there. He can't set the pace himself because he isn't a climber, but he can follow the wheel superbly.
Escartine is losing the wheel, but I'm not too sure. He's not just holding his strength as best he can. He might come back when the slopes level a little bit. Virenque is not having the great climb he was expecting either. He's lost a little bit of gap too.
Phil, the one man who hasn't lost any gap at all is Miguel Indurain. He just keeps on pushing the pace. Other highlights in the Michelin race summary: 153 riders left aim the Plagne today. Quickly, a 15-man breakaway went on the attack. Laurent Jalabert, Richard Virenque, and Ivan Gotti in that group held a 90-second lead on Indurain's main field. Now, Marco Pantani appears to be conquering the climb he's waited for since the Tour started. But there are a couple of riders who won't let him go without a fight. The final turns up L'Alpe d'Huez.
But there you can see on the top the buildings of Alpe d'Huez. They know now they're about 5 kilometers maybe from the top, slightly less. And Bjarne Riis is now man setting the pace here.
It's going to be another outstanding performance by the Danish road racing champion on a day that the man he was always arguing with, Evgeny Berzin, has retired from the Tour de France, apparently ill.
Well, Rees will be happy with this performance, and the team manager, Emmanuel Bombini. In fact, Berzin is in the car watching his teammates there. That is quite incredible. In fact, I'm not quite sure that that is permitted under the rules.
Well, it isn't, because the rules are riders who abandon the Tour must retire from the Tour in a following vehicle, which is not their team car. But anyway, it gave us a chance to see the two men at least as close together in person, if not in friendship. 1 minute 10 now. Pantani riding away to a superb victory that befits the greatest mountain in the Tour de France, Alpe d'Huez. These riders are hanging on in there, though, and the man who's hurting them most now is Bjarne Riis.
That was a very strange move there by Ivan Gotti, because he actually attacked the group of Bjarne Riis, and I would have thought that the two would try and work together to peg back the lead of Marco Pantani. But Miguel Indurain doing a superb job himself, trying to get back up there, but he's being followed all the time by that pilot fish, Alex Zule, the man who's lying in second place in the overall standings at the moment.
There'll be no help from Zule either, not while Laurent Jalabert is here, his Onsay teammate. And Ivan Gotti still willing to work here, and Bjarne Riis, well, with Evgeny Berzin, if only Berzin had the form and could have been in this group instead of in the car, then I think, in fact, Indurain might have had a few problems.
And they would have had a superb team if Berzin had been on form, because with three of them riding the way that these two riders are at the moment, they really could have put him under a lot of pressure. Richard Virenque coming back again. He really wants to stay with this group. He's fighting everything in his body. He really hasn't got a lot left, but he will come back every time. 5 kilometers to go for Marco Pantani.
So Pantani is leading by 1 minute and 12 seconds from the Bjarne Riis group, and just 20 seconds behind are well, not even that now. He's come up so quickly. We've only just had the time check, and this man has continued to fly towards that group. So very shortly, Miguel Indurain will be in the second group on the road, and he won't be overly concerned about the whereabouts of Pantani.
That's why he's a master. He's learned to dose his efforts. He doesn't panic when a break goes away. He waited, like he did yesterday, until he came to the final climb, and then he turned on the engine and he pulled himself back into the race, as he has done so many times in the past. Now, Miguel Indurain has caught these riders up. What a fantastic ride this man is doing.
And Zule is alongside him. Now, is Indurain going to try and ride them all off again? He just tops his cap there as he goes past Virenque. Oh, a double take there by Jalabert, who looked, and then he was expecting to see Virenque on his shoulder, and he saw the yellow jersey right alongside him.
Phil, it's individual performances like this that make L'Alpe d'Huez such a legend in the sport of cycling. Back in a moment. Approaching the summit of L'Alpe d'Huez, Marco Pantani being chased by a group led by Miguel Indurain. He and his group back about 1.5 minutes. Phil?
The gap still around about 1.25 minutes. No further time checks coming from out on the race. But Pantani is not being approached by Indurain at all. 1 minute 32 we now have.
It won't be too long now before Marco Pantani gets into the streets of Alpe d'Huez, and then he'll know and have the time to savour the victory that is going to be his, the greatest victory that any climber, I think, could want, the Alpe d'Huez.
And Indurain still forcing the pace, while behind Indurain, Laurent Jalabert still hanging on in there. And the Carrera team extremely happy with the way things are going now. 2 kilometers to go, and we're on the approach to the town at the top of the mountain. And just look at the people here, and believe me, this is nothing to what awaits Pantani when he goes across the village to the finishing line. This is the section now which is barriered, because you may remember the Tour de France a few years back when the Colombian climber Fabio Parra was almost brought to a standstill because of the people and the motorbikes around him. But now it's Pantani making his way to the summit. Jalabert hanging on to the back wheel here of Ivan Gotti, who has had a great climb himself about d'Huez, will keep his high overall place, as indeed will Laurent Jalabert. 5th and 6th overall in the Tour this morning, these two.
Indurain has got the same face that he's had for the last couple of days. Exactly the same face he had on that stage going into Liège, where he put 50 seconds between himself and his rivals, and that really could well have been the writing on the wall, because the next day he slammed them all in the time trial, apart from this man in the Danish national champions jersey, Bjarne Riis, who finished just 12 seconds behind Indurain. But he's so concentrated and so determined to get this 5th victory that I think, you know, he's going to walk away with it.
The first 3 riders in this year's Tour de France proving just why they are the first 3 riders. Indurain, Zülle, Riis. In that order overall, in that order on our pictures now. Ivan Gotti is just behind them. He will climb up into 4th place overall tonight. He'll go at least ahead of Tony Rominger, and it just depends on the time losses of Rominger. Jalabert could be up to 5th, or at worst holding his place of 6th overall.
Zülle seems to be struggling a little bit at the moment, but you know, just to be able to stay in contact with Miguel Indurain is no mean achievement.
And now we're into the town itself, just to go across the square shortly, and then they run into the finish. They've been pedaling now for over 5 hours today for this trip of 100 miles, 164 kilometers, 162 and a half. And there is the kite in the sky now, 1 kilometer to the summit for Marco Pantani. And it must be a tremendous feeling for this man. He won a stage of the Tour of Switzerland just before the Tour de France started. That was the warning that he was refining his form. Now he's confirmed it today in Alpe d'Huez on what is one of the most beautiful days. There is Laurent Jalabert. He's on the wheel of Ivan Gotti, and he'll be 5th and 6th on the road, these two.
It's a superb performance by a man who's renowned for being a sprinter to get up to the top of the Alpe d'Huez in that. But here is the man who's leading the race at the moment, Marco Pantani. He gets just a little time to recover because this is the flatter part of the course here. He's got 300 or 400 meters before he takes the left-hand turn into the avenue, which has been so magnificent over the last few years with some great victories on the slopes of the Alpe d'Huez.
Gotti and Jalabert hanging back from the group. But here is Marco Pantani now crossing the centre of Alpe d'Huez, and the crowd kept back by barriers this year, so it's a very orderly approach indeed. But look at the strength in this man's legs now. He's being pulled on by inspiration, by the fact he's going to win the most famous day in any Tour de France and be first up to the top of Alpe d'Huez. We've seen so many great names come up here since Fausto Coppi first won back in 1952, but he's overshot the corner. That's the way the cars go, Marco. He's got the time. He's not so much worried about that now. And good job his brakes worked as well. But he's now lined up for the finish, and now he can sprint home. The Italians gasped when they saw that. Now they can welcome him as only Italians can. Flags are waving up here by the finishing line, and Marco Pantani, the finest climber currently racing the circuit in the world of professional cycling, has now proved to everybody this man is a beautiful climber, and he's proved it on the best mountain of the Tour. Marco Pantani salutes the crowd. There's the Italian flag on the right, and he's gaining time, although that won't be important to him, and that is why Miguel Indurain isn't too worried at the moment.
Well, that was a superb performance by Marco Pantani, who's been absolutely mobbed out here by the Italians. They're absolutely going crazy. They're so happy to have an Italian victory at the top of the Alpe d'Huez, because it is a shrine for cycling, it is a shrine for climbers, and Miguel Indurain today realizes that he too has put in a superb performance. He's worked extremely well with his team. He used them as he has done over the last couple of days, and he's going to come up here for second place on the road. But those are the top 3 men in this year's Tour de France.
And Miguel Indurain now is being obliged to lead out the sprint, so Alex Zülle and Bjarne Riis are going to take him in the sprint, I would think. But Indurain, when he doesn't like the people around him, can be very, very determined indeed, and annoyed if they try to jump him. So just let's see what sort of a sprint he can pull out. He knows the way up to Alpe d'Huez. He's done it many times before. He took it tight, so he would force them to attack them on one side of the road. Zülle is warming up for a fine finish here after winning yesterday, but I'm not sure that even Alex Zülle can come on to Miguel Indurain now. It is an uphill finish here, ever so slight, but it's hard after this climb. Indurain, you see, determined to the end. He's going to make it second. Looks over for the rest. Zülle is third. There'll be a separate time for Bjarne Riis.
Marco Pantani, the little Italian who was 3rd overall in last year's 94 Tour, has just won his first stage ever in the Tour de France. We'll be back in a moment. What What more can Miguel Indurain do? Well, he wants to win a stage in the 95 Tour. Bjarne Riis, nothing to hang his head about. He lost time yesterday, but is third overall. Alex Zula, no one expected another stellar ride after what he did yesterday. Phil, this looks like another rider almost missed the turn like Pantani.
And this is a problem for Ivan Gotti there, and he's been left on the corner. And this is the sprint. Well, it's not a sprint. This is 7th place now, so more points for the green jersey on a day when Jalabert was not expected to score. What a great 2 days he's had in the Alps, scoring on both occasions. 7th for Jalabert. And Gotti has got going again. Hasn't made a difference to his finish, I don't think. He'd have never matched Jalabert in a sprint. And so Gotti is going to finish in 8th place. But it's cost him a little bit of time. And he better look over his shoulder too, because Richard Virenque is also anxious to get King of the Mountains points, and he's going to take Gotti right on the line. So Virenque gets 8th, Gotti gets 9th.
Well, Phil, the support that American fans have for their lead rider is as big as his home state. Lance promised himself that he would finish the 95 Tour, something he's never done in Paris. But now with your leader probably dropping below 40th position, where is the motivation?
You know, we're on our mission and our objective to finish the race, and I think that he's well within that range to do that. So I don't think that Lance is doing anything except right now really taking in a lot of information and hoping to be able to use that next year.
Smiling a little wider, Marco Pantani. By 1:24, he beats Miguel Indurain and Alex Zula, two guys in stature much bigger than Marco. Lance Armstrong way down in 56th position, but he did finish L'Alpe d'Huez 18 minutes behind. Frankie Andreo 89th in the field. Marco Pantani doesn't have to bend down too far to get a nice little kiss on the cheek and a bouquet of flowers. Richard Virenque, still one of the favorite Frenchmen, trying to hold on to the polka dot jersey as the mountain climber. These two men finished side by side. This is the only way we could slow down their pace today. No need to look back, Miguel. You hang on to the yellow jersey by 2 minutes and 27 seconds over the man just behind you in that shot, Alex Zula. Bjarne Riis dropped a little bit more time, 6 minutes back in 3rd position. In 4th position, Tony Rominger, usually Indurain's closest competition, showing signs of having trouble. Marco Pantani moves up to 7th. Leader of the 1994 Tour de France remains Miguel Indurain. Tomorrow we'll cross the halfway point. We've gone 1,087 miles. We still have 1,172 to go. Coverage begins in prime time at 7:30 Eastern on ESPN, 11 o'clock over on ESPN2. Marco Pantani's first ever stage win in the Tour de France. For Phil Liggett and Paul Sherwen and our entire ESPN Tour de France team, I'm Adrian Karsten. ESPN's coverage of the 1990
Eastern, next Sports Center at 11. We'll see you tomorrow night at 7 Eastern. I'm Charlie Steiner.
And I'm Robin Roberts. Coming up next, the Tour de France. Enjoy and take care.
The men of the mountain, bigger than ever. Miguel Indurain's intensity is growing. Now he needs to work on his lead. Bjarne Riis turning in one of the biggest efforts of the Tour. Even a little man, Marco Pantani, showed us the climb of his career. But there's also a big hole to fill for Lance Armstrong, the American favorite. Today, stage 11. We go from the French Alps into the mid-mountains, and this could be a dangerous day for the leaders trying to keep control of this race. Hello, everyone. With Phil Liggett, I'm Adrian Karsten, welcoming you to ESPN's exclusive coverage of the 1995 Tour de France presented by Michelin. Today, as we pass the halfway point, take a look at who's on top of the Tour de France. You see Indurain, Zula, Riis. Phil, three big, strong athletes. Nothing against the little guys like Pantani, but we're watching the evolution of this sport. 20 years ago, when you were watching Eddie Merckx, another big man, go for his 5th Tour, he was the exception. Now the big rider is the rule.
It is the rule, and the reason being is because the big teams earn big money. Eddie Merckx is the first to remind us all he didn't earn the big money that men like Indurain, Bjarne Riis and Alex Zula receive today. But for big money, the teams expect big results. That's why this race is running at a full mile an hour quicker than any previous Tour de France. Now, Indurain isn't leading by the margins we would have expected him to be leading. He's only leading by 2 minutes 20 seconds over Alex Zülle, who openly says this Tour is not over. Bjarne Riis now is the undisputed leader of the Gavis team, and I think he'll want to improve his position as well.
The Tour is an endurance race today, an endurance stage, and if the lower placed riders are going to make a move, now's the time to do it?
Yes, because this is a dangerous stage for Miguel Indurain. We're out of the big mountains, we're in the smaller mountains around the back of Saint-Étienne. Now, in the past, many riders have crashed on the descent down into the finish there in the city. He must stay out of trouble. It's the sort of day that some riders might choose to attack.
Maybe some of the motivation comes from yesterday. Another classic climb up to the top of L'Alpe d'Huez. On yesterday's first climb up to the Col de la Madeleine, Richard Virenque in the polka dot jersey added to his lead in the climber category. Our cameras caught Tour rookie Yevgeny Berzin fighting a fever and fatigue. He lost that fight and abandoned his hope to make it through the mountains. Richard Virenque went 2 for 2 in the climbing competition, first to the top of the Col de la Croix de Fer. Short time behind Miguel Indurain, the man in the yellow jersey kept control of the pace in the peloton, not letting anyone make a move until he decided it was time. Then, as the most famous climb in cycling began, the little Italian attacked.
He is the best climber the Tour de France discovered for maybe 10 years. He is absolutely magnificent. And if any man could go across to the group, then it's Pantani.
Pantani kept passing riders through 21 hairpin turns. Back in the peloton, Indurain had control. He also had Alex Zülle on his wheels. The two closed in on the chase group. Behind Pantani, Indurain then decided it was time for him to make his move. The victim, Laurent Jalabert.
Now, is Indurain going to try and ride them all off again? He just tops his cap there as he goes past Virenque. Oh, a double take there by Jalabert, who looked and then he was expecting to see Virenque on his shoulder, and he saw the yellow jersey right alongside him.
Pantani continued the ride of his life. After getting hit by a car and crashing 3 months ago, here he was to win his first Tour stage and the unofficial World Climbing Championship. Oh, did we mention 21 turns? Marco must have lost count somewhere on the climb. Go left, young man. Go left. Here's a look we may get used to through these next few stages. Indurain looking Zülle right in the eye. Let's go. Lance Armstrong now knows what it's like to climb L'Alpe d'Huez, an initiation necessary to someday perhaps win the Tour de France. As Phil said, Miguel Indurain's 2.5-minute lead on Alex Zülle certainly isn't what we're used to. Bjarne Riis and Tony Rominger are 6 and 8 minutes back, respectively, and American Lance Armstrong is in 42nd overall. Bjarne Riis had half of Denmark down in Bourg-d'Oisans this morning, cheering their national champion. Alex Zülle looking pretty fresh after 2 straight days of an unforgiving pace. Today, a change of pace.
On the transition between the Alps and the Pyrenees, a lot of riders who are so far behind will try and attack because they want to take something out of this Tour de France. That is going to make it very difficult for Miguel Indurain because he still has to control the race. But the Once are in a strange situation. They have Alex Zülle in 2nd place in the overall standings, but also Laurent Jalabert in the green jersey. I feel towards the end of the day they will try and close down any breakaways to give Laurent Jalabert a chance to increase his lead in the overall standings in the points jersey. But one other man I crossed this morning was Lance Armstrong. He looks extremely concentrated to me, and he's always said that he likes a good climb and a dangerous descent before the finish of a stage. That's one thing as well that Miguel Indurain will have to look out for, because the descent down into Saint-Étienne is extremely dangerous.
And it's extremely warm in the upper 80s, while Laurent Jalabert will try to keep his green sprinter's jersey. Next 3 days, Lance Armstrong's got to get going if he really wants to make a difference in this year's Tour de France. 65 riders have dropped out in the first half of this year's tour, and in the heat today, that number could certainly increase. From the base of L'Alpe d'Huez, we'll follow the riders 124 miles to Saint-Étienne. 2-time bonus sprints where the real speedsters can duke it out. That'll be Abdijaparov and Jalabert. But again, the mountain climbs are the highlights. Just as we expected, the lower place riders broke away early.
Franz Maassen, Andrea Taffy, Ralph Yerman in that order made some noise in the first bonus sprint. Jalabert and Abdujaparov were 22 seconds behind. We're in the Isère region where they've lined the roads for stage 11.
ESPN's coverage of the 1995 Tour de France is presented by Michelin, because so much is riding on your tires. And by Chevron. No gasoline cleans your engine better than Chevron with the new Techron additive. Chevron, simply smarter.
93 miles into the race on the approach to the Col de Loyon, the main field is staying together, letting the lead group go with about a 7-minute lead. Interestingly, American Lance Armstrong did not go along with that lead group. Out on the course with the call of today's race, Phil Liggett and Paul Sherwen.
Well, we expected a breakaway to go today, and it looks as though the combination is a right one, because the riders who've got away are not affecting the race lead of Miguel Indurain, and for the moment at least there is not a reaction coming from the field. This breakaway of 8 riders broke clear shortly after the hotspot sprint at Viray-Bourrez at 57 kilometers, won by Franz Maassen ahead of Andreas Taffy and Rolf Yerman, and they were quickly joined then by 5 other riders: Armand de las Cuevas, Rolf Aldag, Max Chiandri, the British rider, Eric Breukink, Hernan Buenajora, and the riders now have built a lead of 8 minutes and are only around about 50 kilometers from the finish.
Well, it was a good move. Everybody wanted to get into the move this morning because the race started extremely rapidly with speeds of over 30 miles an hour. It wasn't until they actually got to that first hotspot sprint of the day that the right combination, as you put it, formed, and this is the success of the move at the moment. Nobody is dangerous in the overall standings. The highest placed rider, in fact, is Eric Breukink of the Once squad, who's in 18th place at 20 minutes behind Miguel Indurain.
So the hot weather inspiring one or two of the team managers to say, go and get out there and have a go, because they may give you a lead. And the only sad thing from our point of view, Paul, is that the Motorola rider hasn't joined the attack.
Well, I would have expected them to look for a kind of move like this. This was the day that they should have been. And the next couple of days, too, as we go down towards the Pyrenees, there will be this kind of break every time. And, you know, once you've missed the break, then it's all over.
Well, Paul, we're about to hit the third of 4 climbs, a Category 1, but the real challenge for these racers will come with the descent down the Col de la Croix de Chauveray. They're going to be plunging at about 4,000 feet, 60 miles per hour on hot melting tar. They better look out. There have been crashes here in 1950 and 92. Phil?
Rolf Aldag, the telecom rider, good sprinter if it comes down to a sprint, but remember, we do have the big climb to come before the end, and then the men who will take risks on the descent could slip away.
And it'd be very difficult, in fact, for this group to stay together, because the final climb of the day up to the top of the Col de Loyon is a very, very difficult climb, and we may well see somebody try and break clear before that, because bear in mind that the MG Maleficio team from Italy have 2 members in this breakaway. One of them is Rolf Yerman, a man who is renowned for his ability to slip away from a group, and obviously if that doesn't work, they've got Max Chiandri, who in a situation like this shouldn't get dropped on that tough climb.
And little Buenajora, the rider who is on the inside near the front with the green shorts on, here's the man who's been showing his skill on the climbs. He was first over the top of the Côte de la Fortresse, which is a second category climb, ahead of Andreas Taffy and Breukink, and then he stayed ahead again on the Côte de la Cage, which indicates that he is the candidate for the break coming towards the end of the stage today. And Kelmer usually managed to pick up a stage win each year in the Tour de France, and they haven't done it yet.
They haven't done it yet, but it is a thing that they've always managed to do. This year in the Tour of Italy, they came up with the goods. They had Lordolino Cubino rode an excellent race, which is why, in fact, they were brought into the Tour de France at the very last minute in that group of 5 wildcards. But it's going to be very difficult on the slopes of this climb for all these riders to stay together. That was Franz Maassen just then dropping back to his team car, and he will have information that the grip now is moving up to nearly 9 minutes.
So they are still pulling away at a time normally in the race when the leaders start to react and chase them back. So that's a good sign that this breakaway might well survive the day today.
Phil, especially when you consider the fact that this is the largest lead a breakaway group has had in the Tour so far. They'll be the first to top the Col de Loyon when we return. With just under 27 miles to go, there's trouble in that lead group that still holds about an 8-minute lead on the field as we go up the toughest climb of the day.
And with this time check of 7 minutes 20 seconds, in fact, the breakaway has been blown apart on the lower slopes of the climb.
Well, that was a superb move by Armand de las Cuevas. He realized that there were too many good sprinters in this group, and what he has to do is try and isolate them and get rid of them. That's what he's done at the moment. He's put the pressure on, and when we get up here, we'll be able to see just exactly who has stayed with him. But he's already got rid of Sherwen, he's already got rid of Aldag, who were dangers. But can Massimo Ciandri stay in there? Because he would like to hang on and get over the top. In fact, in second place there, third place, Ciandri is still there for the moment.
So Breukink, Buenahora, Max Ciandri, Rolf Aldag, and in the lead, de las Cuevas. They are the riders now out in front. Rolf Sherwen has been dropped along with Frans Maassen.
Well, that's a superb ride by Rolf Aldag, because I thought with the acceleration of Armand de las Cuevas, he would be one of the first to go. He is an extremely good sprinter, and if de las Cuevas wants to win this stage, he has to get rid of 1, Rolf Aldag, and 2, Max Ciandri, because they're extremely good finishers. At the moment, he's doing a lot of work to try and do that, but it's not really the right part of the climb to do it.
Well, he'd be pleased at least, and he's checking over his shoulder there. He's lost 2 of them. A little bit surprised that Rolf Sherwen got dropped, because he's normally a good climber, and Maassen perhaps a little bit suspect on the slopes.
I think Sherwen had put a lot of work in on the first part of the climb, because he was trying to prepare the terrain for Max Ciandri. He was setting the pace at the bottom just to make sure that there weren't any attacks, so that would keep the group together, which would be much more beneficial for Ciandri.
And there he is, Armand de las Cuevas, the Frenchman, who has always promised a lot but never quite delivered the goods. He's an extremely good time trialist, but he didn't show it this time on the first time trial in Belgium. And he's out of the hunt for the yellow jersey, but there's still, of course, the considerable prize of a stage win in a Tour de France.
A strange rider too. He's had a great deal of problems with his management over the last few years, because let's not forget, he used to be a teammate of Miguel Indurain, but there it looks to me as if Buenahora, the Kelme rider there, decided he would have a go, and that is too much for Rolf Aldag, number 201 in the Telecom jersey there. He can't follow the piece.
So Aldag has been dropped, and it was the double-headed attack there. De las Cuevas was easing up, and now de las Cuevas, because of the effort he made, is in a little bit of trouble now, because in the distance, Buenahora has gone, and I'm not so sure whether Breukink is in trouble too.
Breukink's in trouble, but Max Ciandri has reacted straight away. He realizes the danger. This has always been a fault of Ciandri's, to wait a little bit too long, but this time he didn't. He saw the move going, and he's gone straight across to the Colombian, while you can see the blue jersey of the Castorama rider, de las Cuevas. He is the man suffering now.
Well, the little rider from Colombia has done an excellent piece of attacking here. He waited until Armand de las Cuevas has finished with his turn, and then he really did put home a killer blow. There he is, the rider in the green pants, and he is now clear with Max Ciandri.
And this is a big day for Max Ciandri, because he wasn't just happy enough to catch the Colombian. In fact, he's gone to the front himself now to start doing a little bit of work to try and make the success of this breakaway. Buenahora looks across at him and decides that he will put the pressure on again.
Well, this is the man who's been winning all of the climbs, and Ciandri is trying to hang on to him for a little while at least and get the gaps opened over the others, who are completely spread across this mountain now.
Well, Ciandri is a real rider of class. You know, he's got a fantastic bunch sprint, but he isn't really capable when it has to rival riders like Cipollini or Jamaluddin Abdujaparov. It's when it comes to the smaller groups of 10 or 15 that his pure speed can be proven. But he's got one thing that a lot of sprinters don't have, and that is the ability to climb.
Now, this is a very long climb, the best part of 20 kilometers, around 12 miles from bottom to top. And an early attack like this by Buenahora is going to put some distance between him and the rest of the breakaway. Although I think that Armand de las Cuevas and Eric Breukink is trying to reorganize themselves here. This is Taffy, also behind and in trouble.
Phil, you know, a lot of these so-called next-generation riders have provided a lot of excitement so far in the 95 Tour. At the top of this list, the young riders classification, those 25 and under. After yesterday's performance, Marco Pantani has to head the list. Mariano Rojas, at age 22, a big man, tall, but despite his height, is known as a great climber. Bo Hamburger, 25, big man too. Lance Armstrong will put 6th. He's at 23 years of age. Marco Pantani, cruising. He's biding his time until we get into the Pyrenees. The U.S. Women's Open continues on ESPN tomorrow from the Broadmoor Golf Club in Colorado Springs, Colorado. Patty Sheehan heads the field of golfers competing in the 50th U.S. Women's Open. Total purse of $1 million. Second round continues tomorrow live at 1 p.m. Back to the Tour de France in a moment. This is a good look at a lot of the real talent in this tour. Laurent Jalabert in the green jersey, number 41, Tony Rominger, 4th overall. There's Alex Zula, number 69, 2nd overall. Indurain is in here someplace too, but none of these leaders are really being threatened by the men pushing the pace today. One of those men, Buena Hora, trying to lead up to the top of today's toughest mountain. Phil?
And now he's accelerating. He wants the King of the Mountains points and making steady progress in that competition today. But he's not yet anywhere near challenging Richard Virenque. So for the leaders of all of the competitions, Virenque in the King of the Mountains, Jalabert in green, Indurain in yellow, has been something of a rest day for them because they've allowed the lesser men or the little men of the Tour who aren't challenging them to slip away.
But if there are only 6 riders still left in front of the main field when we come to the finish line, Laurent Jalabert will be in a good position because he would still be able to pick up round about 20 points if Jamaluddin Abdujaparov is no longer in the group.
I'll be surprised, though, in fact, if he isn't, Paul, because it hasn't been too much pressure back there today, and Jamaluddin can hang on when conditions are right. We come up towards the summit now. There's going to be no offer of an attack by Max Chiandri. Quite happy to let the Colombian rider take the points over the top. After all, he's done most of the work up the climb here. And Max has bigger fish to fry. And now they've gone under the banner. Max gets to the front to control things for this small descent.
And Chiandri will now be starting to feel more and more confident. His only possibility of being dropped was on that part of the climb there. The second climb, the third catching climb, is not too difficult at all. And he'll be looking now at Buena Hora just to check him out and see if there are any signs, telltale signs of fatigue, which a rider can pick up from a slight rolling of the shoulder or a move to one side of the knee when the rider's pedaling. And then Chiandri will get more and more confidence.
Here from our helicopter is the yellow jersey sitting on the wheel there of a Banesto teammate. And that's Gonzalez Arrieta. 7 minutes 4 seconds the gap on the main field.
And in fact, that tells me that the Banesto team have shut down. The gap at one time came to 6 minutes and 50 seconds. So now that it's gone up 10 or 15 seconds, means that the Banesto squad aren't putting the big pressure on at the front. They're just happy to keep it at the same distance because the nearest man in the overall standings to Miguel Indurain was Eric Brooking, and he's 20 minutes back. So that's not a great danger.
Paul, as we said, these men, the leaders of the tour, are really not being threatened today. Richard Virenque has gained the most points in the mountain climbing competition. That's the polka dot jersey. Laurent Jalabert has collected the most points in the bonus sprints and at the finish line. He gets green. And Miguel Indurain has the lowest total time overall after the first 12 individual races in the tour. The yellow jersey is his for now. And there's that yellow jersey of Indurain.
Tony Rominger on the left-hand side is moving up there nicely just to make sure that he keeps up to the front and out of danger, and to also let his adversaries know that he's okay today. He's managed to take the heat because he's a rider who does not ride very well in hot conditions. His best performances are in the early part of the year or the later part of the season when the temperature starts to come down a little bit.
Alex Zula riding just behind Miguel Indurain, separated by 2 minutes and 27 seconds. And Zula refusing to concede defeat, and I like his attitude because he still will attack Indurain again. The Once team this year have had a brilliant race. They've done everything right, in my opinion. The strength not always there, but they've made the moves and the attempts to take on Miguel Indurain. As a result, it's been a very interesting tour indeed.
But to me, their strength is their force of numbers, because Laurent Jalabert on the stage yesterday to the top of the Alpe d'Huez looked absolutely superb to me. He never looked as if he was under any great pressure. And I'm fairly sure that when we go to the Pyrenees, the Once riders are going to try that same tactic again, launching one or other of their members away to the front of the race to put pressure on Miguel Indurain and the Banesto team.
And Jose Gonzalez Arrieta taking himself a drink on the way up. Zula on the right. Just one rider that we know of abandoned today, Agradeli, to further reduce the field, but there are a lot of tired men in the Tour de France just now, and the heat we can expect in the next 3 days will also sap their strength.
I have to tell you, for looking at the size of this group, which is a very small group as we come to 1 kilometre to the summit, I feel very sure that Jamaluddin Abdujaparov is not going to be there, because the pressure has been on enough to get rid of a lot of the non-climbers, and Abdu, I think, today won't have been able to stay in there.
.646 is the gap at the moment as they continue the tempo towards the summit of the Col de Rion. And still in between this group, Erik Breukink and Rolf Aldag. Certainly we've seen nothing of Armand de las Cuevas, so he may well be already back in this group, but he was up with them. He was dropped by them further down the climb. Beat Zeeberg, the red helmet, on the left of our picture there in the leading three. He's starting to look very, very useful these last couple of days in the Tour. Very valuable ally now to Marco Pantani when we go down to the Pyrenees, perhaps.
Another man moving up to the front there also is Claudio Chiappucci, who I think will be looking to do something in the Pyrenees, because he, although says he gets on extremely well with Marco Pantani, I don't think we'll be too happy with the amount of good press that Marco Pantani got with that victory yesterday at Alpe d'Huez.
And how often we've seen the image of the leader of the Tour de France, the commander, Miguel Indurain, just sitting in the middle, his hands in the center of the handlebars, tapping out the rhythm and watching everything.
Richard Virenque on the right in the polka dot jersey has now decided that there are still points available in this competition, so he's just moving to the front so that once he sees the banner he will accelerate to get a few more points in the jersey that he wants to keep and take all the way up to Paris.
So Virenque has moved up onto the shoulders of Jose González Arrieta. Udo Boltz, the German road racing champion in the white jersey, has come up towards the front as well, in front of Beat Zeeberg.
González Arrieta really has been the man of the match today. He's sitting in the front, in fact, being the policeman for Miguel Indurain and trying to get people out of the way. And there he sees a bottle, picks it up, and he will probably pass it. Well, he won't pass it around to anybody else. He decides that's enough for me. I'll just have it for myself.
And Virenque, not too content to be on the front. He was hoping to come up from behind somebody probably for the points, but he's got the front position now as we look down from the top of the first category climb today, the Col de Lion. And Virenque is getting very twitchy. He's starting to build up the tempo. He's checking around to see who is likely to challenge him. His second place overall in this is Alex Zülle. Miguel Indurain is third in the mountains. Those three on a bit of a runaway. So is Indurain going to try and take him on, or indeed Alex Zülle? The answer is, I think, no. Richard Virenque, who's on his way up towards the summit. So over the summit come the main field. They're led by Richard Virenque. A little bit of a wait there because the gap is almost 7 minutes. Virenque scores well in the King of the Mountains. The yellow jersey is in second place. Zülle is third. So the top three men in the King of the Mountains competition there, all scoring points today. So the riders now are going to have to decide what they're going to do about a British rider on the attack today. Max Chiandri with the Colombian Bueno Hora. We'll take a break.
A Colombian, Hernan Buena Hora, from a country that's one big climb, is leading the charge up the final mountain today, then the dangerous descent. Phil?
And so we come now to the final climb of the day, a third category climb, the Col de Croix du Chauberet. And I think Max Chiandri will also allow Buena Hora to complete his complete set today, winning all four climbs, as he drops in behind him with something like 500 or 600 meters to go to the top. And once over the top of this pole, then I think Chiandri will be watching and waiting for the finish.
Well, from the top of this climb, it plunges down into the streets of Saint-Étienne. It is a very dangerous descent, and over the pass, as you said earlier, we've seen some incredible crashes. The one that sticks in my mind was the one of Lucho Herrera, who crashed while he was in the lead and still managed to hold on and win the stage victory. And we wouldn't wish that on any of these riders.
Yes, and I remember the visions we had then with the blood all over the face of Lucho Herrera, and the people of Saint-Étienne really appreciated the effort he made that day to win a stage of the Tour de France. This is Armand de las Cuevas, still out on the open road and dropping steadily away from the lead group here. They were timed over the top of the Col de Luyon at 2 minutes 10 seconds. Aldog was third, Tappy was fourth, Breukink was fifth, and then de las Cuevas at 3:50.
Well, this is a strange move, Phil. Before we hit the descent, in fact, Laurent Jalabert has decided that he's going to have another go. He wants to try and get clear because he can also move up in the overall standings, but what he may be thinking about is getting more points for his points jersey, the green jersey which he's wearing at the moment, and there's no reaction in the main field.
Well, maybe a little reaction, though, from Jamaluddin Abdujaparov. This tour-long battle, he's been going one-on-one with Jalabert to get that green sprinter's jersey. Back up front, it's Buena Hora and Chiandri, 7.5 minutes ahead of the field. Laurent Jalabert, fantastic story, 2 crashes in 2 years. Here he is trying to lead the field.
This is Laurent Jalabert on the attack now. But Max Chiandri, the important man for the British viewers today, is out in front still with the Colombian rider Hernan Buena Hora.
Well, the other teams in this Tour de France extremely attentive of Laurent Jalabert. That was Gabriel Colombo of the Gaywiz squad that decided he would put the gas on a little bit and bring Jalabert back, but a cheeky move by Jalabert.
So he's gone back in the field as Jose Gonzalez Arieta sets the pace again for Miguel Indurain. The time gaps are still quite big. The time gaps over the top of the Col de Luyon. It was 2 minutes 10 seconds to Rolf Aldag. He went over third ahead of in a sprint finish ahead of Adrius Tappy and Eric Breukink. And then over in sixth was Armand de las Cuevas, 3 minutes and 50 seconds down. And then there was a wait of 3 minutes before Richard Virenque in a bunch of 27 riders took the place for 7th over the top of the climb.
Well, the 2 riders at the front now will be on the descent, and it is a very difficult and technical descent, but you can see, in fact, the fact that the main field at the front of the led by the Ernesto riders have turned off the speed a little bit. There's a group starting to come back here led by the Colombian rider Alvaro Mejia, who before wasn't in that group of 27 riders, and it may well be that somebody like Jamaluddin Abdujaparov will get a chance to come back here and fight it out with Laurent Jalabert in the finish.
Well, it's a very interesting sprint finish in Saint-Étienne. If you come down this sharp hill and turn right into the home straight, and then a couple of little dog legs before you finish. It's always been controversial over the years gone by, but always given us a good sprint, but it will only be a sprint for the minor placings. I'm sure of that now. Max Chiandri and Buena Hora are going to get away and stay away today. They've done a marvellous job at that.
That's one big advantage of the descent down into Saint-Étienne. It's almost impossible to close the gap. Even with a 30-second gap, you've got a great chance to get up there. In fact, their number 161 is Jamaluddin Abdujaparov. He's managed to come back into the field with that group that chased the lead group of 27 riders, so we could have a good sprint at the finish for 7th place.
And there he goes. Immediately, you're back in the field. You reposition yourself near the front because you don't want to get caught napping again. So he's gone right up the inside. He'll be seeking the green jersey of Laurent Jalabert, the idea being that he wants to let Laurent Jalabert know now that he's back in the field.
Well, a great ride by the man from Tashkent there. Superb, the fact that he could just keep suffering so much because he's not a very good climber, and this is a tough climb, but to pull himself back into the race like that really shows that he's determined to try and take this green jersey to Paris himself.
And the riders are taking on their final drinks of water for the day, because we're now entering the zone where taking drinks from the following cars is forbidden over the last 20 kilometers of the race.
Phil, that last 20K will be some of the most dangerous mileage of the 95 Tour. Well, the next big mountains won't be seen until Saturday when we climb into the Pyrenees, so tomorrow, stage 12, another transition day. We'll have it for you late tomorrow night at 1 a.m. Eastern on ESPN, 11 p.m. on ESPN2. The Tour de France continues. Just as he has for the entire tour, Gerard Rouet, Indurain's right hand, is escorting his man to the front of the field. Paul's watching this closely.
Gerard Rouet at the front there, the Breton, the best lieutenant, I think, that Miguel Indurain has got. Whenever the speed requires, he moves to the front and sets the pace.
Little Vincenti Aparicio is the rider loading up. He's having a marvellous first Tour de France.
This is another man who had a superb day the other day. Bruno Kengialta was the man who went back and waited for Eugenie Berzin, and he in fact then rode back up to the lead group.
I thought he was doing a good ride today, Paul, after that ride, but I think he's been a captive of the main field.
Definitely, but there are 2 more days over the flat stages before we hit the Pyrenees, when he too will have his chance, although he does have the responsibility of having the 3rd man in the overall standings in his team. That's Bjarne Riis, and also Ivan Gotti, who's riding excellently and may well be a surprise when we go to those Pyrenean mountains.
And Gotti today looking for a single second to elevate him into the top 4 of the Tour de France. Timings, by the way, as always, the big peloton, they come in together with no gap of 1 second between any 2 riders, are all given the same time, and that's how all of the bunches are timed. But if there's a gap of a second between the back wheel of the rider in front of the other one, then they are given a separate time. And that gap is not necessarily a single second either, because the time is taken on the first man in the main field that stops the clock. So it can be as much as 10 seconds, even though the gap is only a second between the 2.
Confirmation again that Banesto have shut down the chase. 7 minutes and 23 seconds is the time gap at the moment, behind the 2 leaders, Maximilian Chiandri and Hernan Benahora. They're on the descent down into Saint-Étienne, and it is a very difficult sprint here as well, because it climbs up from the final corner there for about 500 or 600 meters, and in the past it was always regarded as a great stage to win because it used to be the capital of the French cycle industry.
Paul, the performance of these athletes on the machinery and how far it's come since then is really quite something. Now, the Michelin race summary brings us up to date as we head downhill. 143 riders started today's stage 11. The race exploded right from the gun, and it was Armand de las Cuevas who really pulled the trigger. Prior to the climb up the 3rd of 4 mountains, an 8-man breakaway led by 9 minutes. Now at the leaders over the final climb, the sprinter Max Chiandri is being paced by the great Colombian climber Hernan Buenahora. Right now we're focused on the front of the main field. Team Banesto's biggest adversary is going to be Team Once as the tour progresses. Now let's get back out on the course with Phil Liggett.
Just a nice steady tempo today by Banesto. Routine day for this team as they roll now towards Saint-Étienne. And there's a nice souvenir of Gérard Rouet for one of the spectators there. A Banesto racing cap. Beetsberg on the left of our picture for Carrera. González Arrieta is the rider on the right. Zula has stayed glued to the back wheel of Indurain all day today. Not tried to attack him, not a lot of points. He knows if he tried to attack him today, he would be chased immediately. And they're all limiting their losses.
Today has been a little bit of a rest day, I think, for the challengers to Miguel Indurain. They raced extremely hard over the last 2 days in the Alps, and they will be thinking now of the future for when they get down into the Pyrenees, so they will try and conserve as much energy as possible. But one team that can't conserve any energy at all is the Banesto squad, because they have to make sure that they control any attacks like that attack there by Laurent Jalabert.
Now the main field here on this little climb up towards the summit of the Chauberret, and there's the banner. It's not a major climb by any standards, and that's why nobody has really pushed their chance here. Jamaldin Abdou Japrov, who got back into the field, is still tucked in there, and still we see a lot of pink jerseys of Once, so they've kept a good team up here today. Now we're back with the leaders. This is Buenahora on the way down now. The descent takes a little while, and it doesn't drop too steeply at first, and now the riders are able to share the pace here and work together, and that's the sort of gap that means they will not be seeing Miguel Indurain for a change today until after the finishing line.
Phil, with exactly 6.2 miles to go to the finish, Buenahora and Chiandri are picking up speed now, going through these hairpin turns to the finish. The 2 riders picking up speed on the descent into Saint-Étienne, Chiandri and Buenahora. The finish ahead. Here's Paul with the call.
Chandri extremely confident now. He's riding at the front all the time, but I think he's a little bit worried about the fact that he's setting all the pace making at the moment, and in fact making a sign with his hand there to the Colombian rider behind. I think that was just to indicate that we're coming up to a dangerous corner, but soon you'll have to come and try and do some work at the front. But all the time the Colombian rider is just holding back 5 or 10 lengths off Chandri's wheel.
And Max, I would suspect, is noting that too. He has a 10-length lead. He comes off the bend at the bottom of the hill. He might even try to go for it. I'm going around the corner here where Ronan Pensek crashed a few years ago, and our motorcycle cameraman rode absolutely spectacularly not to hit him and still kept his camera rolling so we all could see the pictures.
See today, Chandri must definitely have been going for it, but the choice of wheels that he has there, he's using some extremely aerodynamic rims, which riders will sometimes put on a day when they want to put in a special performance, because the disadvantage to these kind of wheels is, in fact, they're extremely uncomfortable.
5 kilometers to go. And now Buenahora has decided to come through and help out Chandri, so the road has stopped plunging quite so steeply.
Chandri looks very calm and collected there, and I hope that was cold water just to waken him up a little bit to make sure he has all his reflexes before we come up here to the final few meters, because he's going to need them when he needs to explode and get every last little bit out of his body. He's a superb sprinter, but he mustn't make any mistakes at all.
Well, I know that Max is looking and feeling very confident here. He looks very, very good, and he's actually saying something there to Buenahora. I think he was asking about a drink, and he was.
Well, that is a strange move so close to the finish, and it may well be that Chandri is a little bit worried, a little bit nervous. It may well also have been just to check and see what the reflexes were like of the Colombian rider, and Chandri there disposes of that bottle.
Well, that was nice of him. And so the little Colombian now has got no drink. But anyway, there's only 4 kilometers to go. It doesn't matter anymore now. The riders have been strange allies throughout the day today. They're in a group of 8, don't forget. And then on the big climb, it was the Colombian rider who spread-eagled everybody except Chandri, read the move, jumped him and went with him. And they've been together ever since.
Phil, what a great fight going on for first place here in Stage 11. Another great fight going on back home in the United States Sunday night at 7:56 p.m. Eastern Time live, when the first place Rangers in the AL West go after the first place Red Sox in the AL East. ESPN Sunday Night Baseball, close to 8 o'clock. Close to the finish of Stage 11 when we return. With just under 2 miles to go to the finish, Buenahora right on the wheel of Max Chandri as we head into the city of Saint-Étienne in the finish.
Now Buenahora has got the advantage of the back here, and the gap is coming down, but it's coming down ever so slowly that it isn't going to matter at all. 3 kilometers to go. I think Chandri very soon, as we go through the chicanes now into the town. The last bend is a sharp right-hander with adverse camber, and then it is about 400 or 500 meters up to the line. And Chandri may want to try and maneuver the Colombian into that corner first.
He may well try and force him to the front, because he would like to keep an eye on the Colombian and know exactly when he's going to start his sprint from. But Chandri is strong enough to lead out the sprint, and he can control it. Even from the front, I think he has an advantage in a sprint like this.
Well, on Sunday, we go up to Guzeneige, of course, and that was the hunting ground of Robert Miller 11 years ago, where he won there. And that's the last time a British rider won a road racing stage of the Tour de France, back in 1984. Now, I hope I haven't built Max Chandri up too much here, but normally his finish is a good one in small groups. He is a fast finisher. He's taken out a British racing license this year because he wants to ride the World Championships, which ironically today are in Colombia, and he has a Colombian with him. and because the Italian Cycling Federation have never named him on the World Championship team. So he's got a British passport, he's entitled to a British license.
And let's not forget that to the Olympic Games next year, which is something else he would like to go forward to. And I feel that Chandri should have taken this decision a lot earlier. Now is the time when it gets very nervous. Chandri stretching his legs a little bit there, looking over at the Colombian, and it won't be long before he tries to force him to the front.
And this looks like the streamlined figure of Vyacheslav Yekimov, who's trying to make a late rush away from the main field on the descent. But there's still a number of riders in front. There are, in fact, 5 men in front today. We think Armand de las Cuevas is also in front, but we haven't seen anything of him for some time.
Now's the time when it gets nervous. Now's the time when you wonder how you're going to place the sprint. Chandri will have thought about this for the last 4 or 5 kilometers. He knows the finish here. He knows exactly what he has to do, and he may well have run through 2 or 3 scenarios in his mind of how he's going to try and win this sprint. But if he makes a mistake 300 or 400 meters from the line by choosing the wrong gear or starting to sprint too soon, he could throw away what should be for him an easy victory.
Surprisingly, Max has taken up the pace-making again as we're heading down to the right-hand turn, which will take us into the home straight. There's the kilometre flag. Now, the shivers will be going down the backs of both of them, I would imagine. They're so close to a stage victory in the Tour de France, either one of them. And it's a question of who produces the best finish. Now, 9 times out of 10, Max Chandri would for Great Britain. But indeed, who knows how inspired this Colombian rider will be in the sprint. After all, he's won every climb today, and I'm sure he'll be given the most aggressive riders award of the day. Now, Chandri doesn't want to start too soon. It's a long, long way. It's slightly uphill. The road isn't dead straight. He's, in fact, got himself in a bad position here now because he's going to give the Colombian a fair shot at gold.
Not a bad move, though, for Chandri, because he is a very strong rider. He knows he's got the fastest sprint. He's going to try and lead out and wait till he starts his sprint till just the last moment, and that will be the possibility for him to accelerate as soon as the Colombian comes up alongside him.
He's holding on the left of the road, making the Colombian come on his right shoulder. He is tempting him. He's asking him virtually to come round him and start the sprint, because a sprinter loves to be led to the line. And Max, I think, has put himself in a bad position here, but he may feel he's got the strength to finish off a climber anyway, because climbers aren't usually good sprinters. And now Max is going to have to go from the front, so he's going to be very, very special indeed. He's moving across the road now. The Colombian, you can see him. He hasn't got the strength to get onto the wheel. He's going to have a little dig at Max, but it'll be nothing like enough. And Max Chandri for Great Britain gets the stage. Chandri wins the stage today for Great Britain. The Italian-based rider is home and gets the victory. And the main field on the way down, but there are still riders in front as well.
Phil, in that main field, Laurent Jalabert and Jamaluddin Abdujaparov continuing that tour-long fight for the green sprinter's jersey. More bonus points on the line at the finish line in a moment. This sprint in the streets of Saint-Étienne is for 3rd, 4th, and 5th place. That's Rolf Aldag coming across just ahead of Andrea Tappi, then Eric Breukink. Now De Las Cuevas is coming up the street.
And here's the arrival of Armand de las Cuevas. 5 minutes and counting since the arrival of the stage winner today, Max Chandri. De las Cuevas happy enough with 6th place. He started most of the action, but he couldn't keep it up in the end. And now, as you can see, more than 5 minutes since Chandri finished. As the race now starts to the line, Abdujaparov was trying to get onto the wheel of Jalabert. He's tucked in nicely at the moment. Now he dives onto the wheel and kicks off Bjorn Reister. But now you can see Jalabert, and Jalabert is going to be... Oh, and that's got to the photo. Jalabert and Jamaluddin Abdujaparov hit the line almost in unison, just on 6 minutes down.
First to come across the line, Phil, in stage 11, Maximilian Chandri. I'll bet he feels like a million now. This is the first time he's ever won a stage of the Tour de France. Miguel Indurain side by side with Tony Rominger, 21st and 22nd. Lance Armstrong, 59th in today's stage. Well, so far, some of the greatest action in the 95 Tour isn't always coming from the stage winners. It's coming from Jamaluddin Abdujaparov and Laurent Jalabert for the green jersey.
And just look at this for a battle of the 2 sprinters of this race. At this point, it looked as though Laurent Jalabert had the stage won. Then Jalabert took a desperate dive for the back wheel, knocking off his wheel. In fact, there was Bjorn Reiss as Abdujaparov got the back wheel of Jalabert. Then he started to kick again, and just look at the speed of this man from Uzbekistan. coming up very, very rapidly, and the line comes at just about the same time as they both hit it.
Phil, let's put our fans right on the finish line. Give the green jersey to Laurent Jalabert. How does Abdu feel? He wore that jersey all of '94. Maximilian Chiandri, how do you feel today?
I'm very happy, because I needed it, I never won a stage in the Tour. Today was a really hard stage, and I really looked for the win, so I'm really happy.
Big Mig on the big screen. He continues to lead the 1995 Tour de France overall. The other big men we mentioned before the race started, their positions overall don't change. Alex Zula in second, Bjarne Riis is third. Lance Armstrong in 46th position overall. The other American, Frankie Andreu, is 104th. So the leader of the 1995 Tour de France remains Miguel Indurain. The world's greatest cycling event has now traveled 1,211 miles with 1,048 still left to go. Be sure to join us for stage 12 when the tour begins in Saint-Étienne and ends in Mende. Coverage begins on ESPN late Friday night at 1 a.m. Eastern, 11 p.m. on ESPN2. For Phil Liggett and Paul Sherwen and our entire ESPN Tour de France team, I'm Adrian Karsten. See you tomorrow.
ESPN's coverage of the 1995 Tour de France has been presented by Michelin, because so much is riding on your tires. And by Pep Boys. For quality parts, accessories, and service, come to Pep Boys, America's automotive supercenter. Over 3 weeks and 2,500 miles, anything is possible. Just because a rider crashes again doesn't mean he can't get up and win again and again and again. Today, all of France celebrates the storming of the Bastille and their fight for independence. And here at the start line in Saint-Étienne, the riders may be planning a bit of a revolution of their own. Hello, everyone. I'm Adrian Karsten, along with Phil Liggett, welcoming you to ESPN's exclusive coverage of the 1995 Tour de France presented by Michelin. You know, Phil, almost every summer since 1903, this modern-day war called the Tour de France has been raging across this country. And almost every summer within this major war, there are a lot of little battles. Now, granted, the ultimate spoils of this war are the yellow jersey, but this combat for green has become hand-to-hand.
I tell you, Adrian, this year I think we're seeing one of the finest competitions here for the green jersey. Jamaluddin Abdou-Japarov, the leader of Novell, wants to win it for a fourth time. Laurent Jalabert wants to win it for a second time. But you know, the Novell team, which Abdou-Japarov is a member of, that's all they have to race for. They never did have a contender for the overall yellow jersey of this race. Now, Jalabert's Once team, of course, they've got Alex Zula up there in second place, and Jalabert himself, a real contender for a top 3 finish in Paris. But he still wants that green jersey. He wants to prove he's a great sprint finisher. My goodness me, yesterday 1 centimetre in it between the two here in Saint-Étienne. I think, you know, this competition will go right down to the line in Paris.
Phil, I agree with you, and I also think that these are some of the toughest days of the Tour. Just because we're in between the Alps and the Pyrenees does not mean that the Tour de France slows down.
There's no easy stage of the Tour de France. These are difficult days for Miguel Indurain. He knows there's always the chance of a silly escape succeeding. Of course, today especially, the French will look for a possible victory, and there are some good young French riders in this race. There's never an easy day in the Tour.
So the Tour is in transition. It all started yesterday as we came out of the French Alps. After climbing Alpe d'Huez, you'd guess that the riders would get a break. Guess again. In 90-degree conditions, an early breakaway of 8 riders hoping to jump on Indurain's lead built up a lead of their own over 9 minutes. But on the third mountain climb, the breakaway was blown apart. The Colombian climber Hernan Buenaora and Max Chiandri took off. No cause for panic in the peloton, though. No real contenders were out in front of the field. The guys kept a union pace. A good time for Lance Armstrong to attack and make a difference in the transition stage? Well, we'll never know. At almost 60 miles per hour, Buenaora and Chiandri took the plunge into Saint-Étienne with no way for the field to catch them. Buenaora had the lead, then Chiandri. That's the way it went for 15 miles.
And now Max is going to have to go from the front, so he's going to be very, very special indeed. He's moving across the road now. The Colombian, you can see him. He hasn't got the strength to get onto the wheel. He's going to have a little dig at Max, but it'll be nothing like enough. And Max Shandry for Great Britain gets the stage.
5 minutes later, the field plowed into town, led by two who refused to lose.
Abdul-Jafarov was trying to get onto the wheel of Jalabert. He's tucked in nicely at the moment. Now he dives onto the wheel and kicks up Bjorn Reister. But now you can see Jalabert, and Jalabert is going to be... Oh, and that's got to the photo. Jalabert and Jamaluddin Abdul-Jafarov hit the line almost in unison.
Jalabert by inches after 120 miles. He got the green jersey. Abdul-Jafarov shot, ready to reload for today. Because of this battle, a lot of fans here right now feel the green means almost as much as the yellow. But everything's big about big, but maybe one thing's not big enough. Like his lead, 2:27 over Alex Zula, who has hung with him for the last 4 days. Reese, Rominger, Jalabert, all in the top 6. Still believe he can be beaten. Lance Armstrong, 46th. Frankie Andreo over halfway back in the field. Once teammates Laurent Jalabert and Alex Zula side by side getting something before breakfast and in the overall standings. Here's Paul Sherwen.
One man who would definitely like to try and win today is Laurent Jalabert, the current leader of the green jersey competition. You know, the French haven't won on Bastille Day for 6 years, and then it was Vincent Barteau who won on the streets of Marseille. But one thing the Once squad will have to be aware of is Miguel Indurain yesterday gave everybody a ticket to leave the peloton if they want to. The riders who are over an hour behind will attack because they saw that breakaway succeed yesterday. If the Onces want to take Jalabert to the top of the mountain in Mende, they're going to have to do all the work to get him there.
A bicycle in colors of Team Motorola. Surprised that they haven't done anything within the past couple of days. American Lance Armstrong, maybe he'll make a move today. Jamaluddin Abdul-Jafarov won the green jersey in 91, 3 and 4. The man who kept it from him in 92, Laurent Jalabert. No one's getting any work done in Denmark these days. They're all watching this man, Bjarne Riis. He joins the remaining field of 140, rolling off the start line this morning in Saint-Étienne, a sunny Bastille Day in France. Some along the line say that the guys on the motorcycles may be the only ones who can catch and pass Miguel Indurain as he goes for his 5th straight tour. However, these may be dangerous days for Big Mig. Some say he tends to falter later in this race. This is one way to celebrate the Bastille. Get on your bike and race 124 miles. There will be 2 bonus sprints, 5 climbs, 2 of them are killers. This is classic Tour de France, long course through storybook countryside. Well, the story early in the race was Laurent Jalabert in the green jersey. Overall, 9 minutes and 16 seconds back on the leader, Miguel Indurain. At 50 miles in, he decided to break away. Lance Armstrong so far had been biding his time, but he got off on the right foot today. He placed 2nd in the first mountain climb behind Thierry Marie. Now we're looking at Laurent Jalabert in front, Dario Bottaro in back. Those two who broke away earlier are now joined by Jalabert's Once teammate Melchior Maury as Jalabert begins to build his speed heading for the first sprints of the day. A lot of action to come. You're going to flip over our show today.
ESPN's coverage of the 1995 Tour de France is presented by Michelin, because so much is riding on your tires.
Popping with flavor, more flavor than ever, and less fat, too. It's the right thing to do. Popping with flavor. Pringles right, crisp flavors, they're new. And the taste indulging, right thing to do. Tangy, sour cream and onion, now more flavor on the chips. Less fat and less grease across your lips. Popping with flavor. Pringles right, crisp flavor. Once you pop, you can't stop.
It's July 14th in France, Bastille Day, the day these countrymen celebrate their independence. 3 men who celebrated their independence early from the field are led by Laurent Jalabert. 40 miles into stage 12, the sprinters got a chance to crank it up, and Jalabert had the early lead on the field. Made it pay off here. He took first in the sprint. Dario Bottaro was second, and Melchior Mauri, his Once teammate, took third. To the mountains. We've passed the first two, still three to come. The final climb to the finish line up Mende de Cos is steeper than any part of L'Alpe d'Huez. Now remember, Paul Sherwen predicted that this course was suited very well for Laurent Jalabert and Lance Armstrong. 6 miles past the first sprint, 3 more riders joined that original 3-man breakaway. A Motorola rider was there, but it was Andrea Perrone, not Lance Armstrong. Now, 3 miles prior to the second sprint, here's Phil.
And this is the man who has played a card again today. We expected something to happen from Laurent Jalabert. He's made no secret of the fact he wants to win a stage of the Tour de France on Bastille Day. But the rider in the green jersey, I think, has pulled off a tremendous tactic. He's gone clear with 2 of his teammates. This is Melchior Mauri from the Once team. The rider here, just behind Mauri there, was Neil Stevens. Then we have Dario Bottario, Andrew Perrone of the Motorola team, and Massimo Podenzano, the former champion of Italy for Brescia. Now that's the 6 men who've gone clear. They've been away basically since 50 kilometers covered today. They're now about 70 kilometers from the finish, and at last the peloton is beginning to set a tempo. Now at this moment in time, the green jersey of Laurent Jalabert, it can be converted to yellow because the race lead on the road is 10 minutes and 36 seconds. And at the start of the day, Jalabert, Paul, was just 9 minutes and 16 seconds down.
What a day for Bastille Day for the French, for Laurent Jalabert. We've been waiting for a couple of days for the Once to do something, and I thought they may well wait until we got down to the Pyrenees, because that is the area where really Miguel Indurain is most suspect. What they've done is they've waited until this stage because it is a stage when nobody would expect the Once to do something, which is what they've actually gone out and done.
Well, they're heading up towards the second sprint of the day. Let me tell you straight away that Jalabert won the first sprint at Chamonix, and now we're heading up towards the second sprint here at Roux. And it's 50 kilometers still to go to the finish. And so this is a marvellous move by Jalabert, and it's again putting the pressure on Indurain. Jalabert starting the day in 6th place overall. Approaching the sprint here now, just inside 500 meters, about 400 still to go, and Laurent Jalabert will be looking for 6 rather simple points towards that green jersey. He's won the first 6 today ahead of Bottaro and Mauri, and now Neil Stevens moves over and lets him go through. Bottaro is trying to stay with him, but he won't attack Jalabert, who takes another 6 points. So he now has 12 points today gained in the green jersey competition. Slowly but surely, Paul, he is moving away from Jamaluddin Abdou-Japarov.
Definitely, if this breakaway can stay clear as well, he really increase his lead in that overall standing in the green jersey today, because I don't really think that the kind of finish up here is going to suit Jamaluddin Abdou-Japarov at all. There you just get a chance to see Laurent Jalabert looking across to Neil Stevens. Thank you very much, you've done exactly what is needed, and he accelerates up to the line to take maximum points.
And now it's back into the routine of helping each other here, all for one and one for all, the musketeer spirit, as they try to keep clear of the field. I hesitate because we're just being told from Radio Tour that the gap is now 10 minutes and 10 seconds ahead of the peloton of Miguel Indurain. It is still a very good gap, but this climb, Paul, we have now seen is indeed a difficult ascent.
I think it's a lot more difficult than most people would have expected. It is a tough climb that climbs for about 5 kilometers, and the surprise to me was once you get to the top, there's a 1 kilometer flat before then a long false flat up to the finish line, which would definitely suit Laurent Jalabert. It's a sprint finish for an extremely strong man, which is what he is.
And it's amazing, really, that 3 Once riders have been allowed to make the way in this breakaway. Just to confirm that result, by the way, I think I said it was Bottaro who was second. It was indeed Podenzano from the Brescia team who followed Jalabert through there, and Neil Stevens just stayed in position to get 3rd place over the line. But the breakaway started today, just before they started the climb, a small 3rd category climb of the Côte de Saint-Maurice-en-Gaugeois. after only 18 kilometers, about 11 miles. The breakaway was thinking of going. The climb was won, in fact, by Thierry Marie, with Lance Armstrong looking for a move today in second place, and Lordolino Cubino was third. But by the time they come down that climb, the first three riders were on the attack, and that was Bottaro, Jalabert and Melchior Mauri. Then the little group of three were chasing Stevens, Perron and Podensana just over a minute back. The main field at that point over 2 minutes back. And then Jalabert heard, in fact, that Neil Stevens was in the chasing three, and they waited until Stevens, Perron and Podensana caught up, and then the six men got on with the job in hand, and now they have this big lead.
Phil, meanwhile, Team Benesto, Indurain's guys, are getting beat up trying to chase down Laurent Jalabert for the second day in a row. They may not be able to do it on their own. Stage 12 continues in a moment. Since Miguel Indurain began dominating the Tour's individual time trial in 1991, in yellow he has been invincible. Now, for the third time since last Sunday's time trial, his overall Tour lead is in serious jeopardy. We've said anything is possible.
And there's a problem here for the green jersey, a front wheel puncture for Laurent Jalabert. Well, this is always a problem, but he's got plenty of time. At least two riders in that breakaway are going to wait for him, and a good wheel change as well.
There won't be any problem at all for Laurent Jalabert, because the two teammates of his in the break there, Neil Stevens and Melchior Mauri, will turn off the pressure and wait for him to come back. And so will the other three riders there too, because they realise they have to keep together if they're going to try and hold off the main field, who are chasing quite difficult. And look at that, Neil Stevens, the eternal faithful teammate, waits directly for Laurent Jalabert and will pace him up to the rest of the breakaway.
And what's the better? The next man up the road is Melchior Mauri, also waiting to continue the train back up to the leaders. The gap is coming down, though. There is now a reaction from the field. It's down to a shade over 9 minutes. Any thoughts, and I'm sure he didn't have too many thoughts of a yellow jersey today, Laurent Jalabert is now no longer the leader of the Tour on the road.
Phil, you know, we get so used to seeing Miguel Indurain in the yellow jersey, sometimes the significance of that jersey gets lost. But for the 51st day in his pro career, Miguel Indurain is wearing that jersey. So why is this day so special? Well, that matches the mark established by Jacques Anquetil. Anquetil was one of only 3 men to win 5 Tours de France. Anquetil, a superb time trialist, was the man that Miguel admits was his career role model. When Anquetil died a few years ago, some believe Indurain inherited his style. 2 men, 1 jersey. And that's where Miguel gets some of his motivation to become the first man ever to win 5 straight Tours. At this moment, it also comes from Jose Miguel Echevarri, who was one of Anquetil's teammates and who is now Indurain's director. Echevarri, who discovered Miguel as a teenager, is a direct link between the Tour's past and present. Well, at this very moment, he's going to have to take all he's learned from that legacy, past and present, and apply it to this race, because 3 ONCE team members are challenging him.
And this is that breakaway now. 3 ONCE riders, Jalabert, Mauri and Stevens. A Gavies rider in Bottaro. Motorola have Perron, and Brescia have Massimo Podenzana. The last time check we got was 9 minutes and 17 seconds. It has been up to almost 11 minutes, and as you can see, we're now just 40 kilometers or 25 miles from the finish, and we are on the last climb of the day before the finishing climb.
Well, you know, it's been a very good coup by the ONCE squad today, because tactically they played it superbly. I don't think anybody would have expected them to attack. And when they had Melchior Mauri and Jalabert in front, they actually waited when they got the information that Neil Stevens was coming across. 3 riders from the same team in a group of 6 really is a record for success.
And when we think that Mauri is 8th overall, 12 minutes 49 behind Indurain, Jalabert is 6th overall, 9:16 back. At one stage, Jalabert was the yellow jersey on the road, but behind, Indurain again has showed how cool he is. He never launched the attack. He has more or less cajoled the other teams to go on the chase down, because they want to get a stage win and they want to see this breakaway reduced. And so again, Indurain hasn't panicked when somebody has threatened his overall lead.
Well, he has no reason to panic, really, because Laurent Jalabert, I'm sure, won't be able to ride Miguel Indurain in the big mountains if Indurain really needed to put the hammer down and get rid of him, even though Jalabert has improved so much. But But again, he really has played the tactical game. He's left it right until the last minute, and the other teams panicked, and they've moved to the front. There are three or four teams chasing at the moment now. You have Gaywiz have moved up there, Pulte, and the last time I saw, even the MG team of Max Chiandri were at the front too.
And long climbs here. This is a third category climb here, the Côte de Charpal.
It looks to me like Neil Stevens has done his job for the day. He's given an awful lot of his energy to the success of this breakaway, and now he can no longer follow the rhythm set by the riders in that group. But what a man. You have to take your hat off to this Aussie. He really gives it everything he's got.
Well, he was called into service not very long ago. There's the gap, 9 minutes 7 seconds. Stevens was the first rider who dropped back when he saw Jalabert puncture his front wheel. And Jalabert made a swift return to this breakaway. Melchior Mari also stopped a little later on and got them back into this leading group. Look at the crowd here. Massive crowds in little clumps all over the route today. It's the most beautiful part of France. We're heading down towards the Tarn Gorges. And now it looks as though Stevens is going to go off. There is a chance he will rejoin on the descent as we head down towards Mende. But once we're down there, we've then got a brute of a climb that brings the riders up to the airfield, high above the town, where they race onto a plateau.
It really is a tough climb, and I think it's going to take one or two riders by surprise. Although when the Midi Libre was down here in the month of June, several riders came down here just to check out the finish, and one of those riders was Miguel Indurain, because he'd heard that it was a very difficult finish and he wanted to keep all his options covered.
Well, Jalabert was well into the lead by over a minute, but now the gap has come down to just over 9 minutes, and he started the day, don't forget, 9 minutes 16 seconds behind, so he's up into second place right now, and that's another but that's only over Alex Azula, his teammate, so there'll be no reaction from Onse, but the Gayviz team will be worried about Jalabert taking the third place on the overall classification, and that is why the Gayviz rider here is sitting at the back, Bottaro, and hasn't helped all day, and that behind, we understand now, Gaywiz are trying to start a chase.
Well, Phil, here's some more international racing that you might be interested in. Back in your home of Great Britain, it's the Formula One Grand Prix of Britain on Sunday, July 16th. Michael Schumacher won the last race, the French Grand Prix, and leads the overall standings. Sunday on ESPN. Back in a moment.
It's as far as Michelin science has ever gone. Our biggest breakthrough since we invented the radial. Technology that brings us to a new level of performance, in good weather and bad, in the rain, in the snow. Technology so advanced, it even saves gas. The new energy tires with Radial XSE technology from Michelin. It's science that goes beyond magic.
And now let's make that random call with today's $10,000 question. Who shot Alexander Hamilton in that famous duel?
Hello, for $10,000. Excuse me? Oh, I'm sorry. Your time is up.
Got milk?
There are just under 9 miles to go for the leader, Laurent Jalabert, but the main field, including Miguel Indurain, is trying to minimize the damage he's done. What's happening with their pace, Phil?
Well, the race is now picking up. Neil Stevens here, the man who did so much work in that breakaway. He's the first to be caught. He's now back in the bunch. The gap is a little under 5 minutes now, and we still have 5 of the original 6 men out in front. But the man who has been doing all of the work, Paul, is Melchior Mari. What a tremendous ride he's done up there today.
This really reflects to me the spirit of the Onse squad, though, because Neil Stevens was in that break initially. He gave everything he could, then he sat up and waited to be caught by the main field. And now Melchior Mari, who, don't forget, himself this morning was 8th overall in the standings, decided that he is going to give everything he's got to get Laurent Jalabert to the bottom of the climb, where Jalabert will then take over. And if he can, he has to get rid of the 3 riders who are with him, because they haven't been doing any work at all over the last few kilometers.
That man wearing Banesto's number 8, Gerard Rouet. As a lieutenant, he starts every day with a commitment to his captain, Miguel Indurain, to carry him to victory.
And here's the ever-faithful Gerard Rouet coming back up to the front now for Indurain. Yesterday he made the pace for as long as he could before he flew, and
and left Indurain to really save the day.
To give you an idea of just how much he tried yesterday, on that final climb of Plagne, which is an 18-kilometer climb, 12 miles, he lost 26 minutes on his leader, Miguel Indurain.
You won't see Miguel following many men, but he knows how passionate Rouet is about his role. If Indurain is to be remembered as one of the best, don't forget Gerard Rouet.
He is a very, very great champion on the bicycle, but also in life. He's extraordinary. He has a giant heart for all of his teammates. Yes, I really, really like him.
His individual effort translates to the team. Gerard Rouet in our Coca-Cola Racer Profile. He'll be a busy man trying to turn away another team, Team Once, one of the biggest challenges to Banesto since '91.
And this Once team is tremendously well organized. It's one of the most successful teams on the circuit this year, and now you can see why, because they have every reason to be argumentative among themselves. There are a number of riders who could lead on the team. You've got Zula here as well, but they're always planning to work as one unit.
It really is a musketeer spirit, because it is really all for one and one for all. It doesn't matter who is the best placed rider at the time. They all rally round, and I think that is the strength of Manolo Sainz, the team manager of that squad, who really creates a great atmosphere in the team.
So Melchior Mauri now on the steady descent, taking us down towards Mende, and then it's straight up the mountain high above the town.
Melchior Mauri here at the moment, just sacrificing himself. He will give everything he's got just to get to the bottom of the climb in Mende, and then it will be up to Laurent Jalabert to assume the role of leader and the man who is going to try and win today, because let's not forget, we said earlier in the morning that in fact Laurent Jalabert would like to be the first Frenchman to win.
And as we're watching the breakaway here, the main field have passed under the 20 kilometers to go banner. And we understand that Miguel Indurain has launched an attack off the front of the bunch. Well, I'm sure they'll be after him pretty smartish. But it just shows now that he's anxious to get this gap closed down. And of course, the Gavry's team are going to help him, because they don't want to see Bjarne Riis lose that third place overall. But it wasn't the intention of Jalabert today to take the yellow jersey in the Tour de France. He wanted to attack early because he knew the field were watching him. If he tried to make a move near the end, I'm sure he wouldn't have got clear. But he made his move very early on, and they werenent expecting that. Bourg-d'Oisans is probably the joker in the pack here, who could spoil the French party today.
Well, he could do, because strangely enough, Bourg-d'Oisans only had one victory last year, and that was in fact the Italian National Championships. The year before he had 2 victories, and one of those was the Italian Championship. So he is a rider who can create a superb performance on one day, and for the last 10 or 15 kilometers he's been sitting at the back of the pack, not doing any work at all.
10 kilometers to go for the breakaways now, just 6 miles. Now normally they'd be home and dry in about 13 or 14 minutes, but unfortunately for them, they have to climb up the mountain to the finish. There's the latest check. In fact, it's still good, Paul. 7 minutes 38 seconds. Now they're holding their advantage here at the moment.
They won't pull down the gap at all as they come down the descent into Mende, and if this gap does tumble, it's going to be on the final climb up to the finish line here outside the aerodrome. And you know, Melchior Mauri is doing a superb job at the moment. He's giving every last little bit of energy he can to make sure that they don't lose any time.
Paul, a reminder that tomorrow the tour starts where today we finish, in Mende. Stage 13 rolls over 150 miles to the foot of the Pyrenees. 6 more mountains tomorrow, just 1 more today, but another explosive day guaranteed. You'll see it early Sunday morning at 3:30 Eastern on ESPN. We're back to go up 1 more mountain in today's stage in just a moment. As you watch Laurent Jalabert, consider his comeback in the last 12 months. 2 crashes, he's worn the yellow jersey, and here he is getting stronger and faster as the tour gets longer.
Just looking at Laurent Jalabert for the last few days, it really amazes me the ease of his pedaling strokes. He really has gained an awful lot of power over the last 12 months, and it may well be that that crash gave him a forced rest, and he came back a lot stronger.
As far as we know, Indurain's little move, which came a few kilometers back, has been swept up by that lead group of some 40 riders, and so they're all together again. The
Poultry team, by the way, is one of only 2 teams left with a full complement still in this race of 9 riders. The other one, dare I say it, is the Benesto squad of Miguel Indurain. All of the other teams have now lost men. In the case of Lotto, of course, they've only got 2 men left.
That is total devastation, I think, for the Lotto squad, and it hasn't gone down very well with the Belgian press, because Belgian cycling a couple of years ago was regarded as the tops, and now they're having a great deal of difficulty having half a dozen riders finish the Tour de France.
Well, it's 4-star petrol today in the legs of Melchior Mauri. He's still setting the pace. There we can see the climb. It gives you no idea of the gradient. But believe me, it is top one, and he's gone. Well, it was a bad time for our cameras to move away, because that was the time that Jalabert decided to accelerate, and he's gone. And that is the attack we expected. It looks to me as though Bourg-d'Oisans, and though it's the Gaby's rider, Bottaro has gone after him. So look at this, he's sat on the back ever since the break started. Now he's chasing Jalabert.
And he's having a great deal of difficulty getting to the wheel of Laurent Jalabert, but the other riders have just been blown away by the attack of Laurent Jalabert. He knew this was his climb, and I feel fairly sure that he's been to check it out beforehand, because he too rode the midi-leave, as did Miguel Indurain. He has chance now to look over his shoulder, and he sees that Bottaro cannot get into contention. He can't close the gap on flying Laurent Jalabert.
And you know, Bottaro has sat at the back all day, and he still hasn't the legs to reach this man, Laurent Jalabert. Bottaro has only won 2 races in his whole cycling career, and one of those was a stage of the Tour of Holland. Now we're heading up now towards the 4 kilometers to go point, and the time check is just under 8 minutes now to the leader on the road, and here he is. And you know, Paul, he is only 2 minutes off the yellow jersey as well, so he could be in second place tonight.
He could well be. The time that he needs is 6 minutes and 49 seconds to move ahead of his own teammate Alex Zuller. But you know, he's not worried about that. I think what he's worried about is moving up into 3rd place and also winning on the 14th of July, Bastille Day. He said this was the stage that he wanted, and he must have known in the back of his mind that it suited him down to the ground.
Well, Bottaro is still persisting, and we've got a 3rd man trying to come up to him. But now Jalabert has made the burst we anticipated. Now he's going to have to settle in and start picking up just a steady rhythm. Just checking on the whereabouts of Bottaro. Bottaro made the big effort, didn't have the legs at all, didn't quite get on his wheel. And it was a little bit unfortunate that our French cameras were again looking at the sky when the move that mattered happened.
Well, Phil, you have to wonder how much damage, both physically and psychologically, these moves of Laurent Jalabert are doing to Miguel Indurain. Part of the answer when we return. The French are getting fired up for a Bastille Day celebration as their favorite son, Frenchman Laurent Jalabert, is in the lead.
And the French could well be destroying the chances of their own rider here. Jean-Marie Leblanc, the race director, quite clearly wants people out of the way. I don't think anybody should be in there right now.
Jalabert must have about 2 kilometers to go, because I just noticed the 1 kilometer to the summit, and at the summit there is still another further kilometer before we get up to the finish line. But Jalabert is riding consistently. He looks very easy at the moment. He looks excellent. It doesn't look to me as if he is suffering, but it is an advantage for Bourg-d'Oisans to see the tail of the cars behind. That will encourage him, because he knows that is how far in front of him Laurent Jalabert actually is.
And of course it goes downhill just before we hit the runway, and then race on the flat to the finishing line. Jalabert's face, as we've come to know over these 2 weeks of the Tour de France, tells you absolutely nothing. And here's our new friend from the mountains, Marco Pantani, now driving, and I would imagine that Marco himself is going to try and break clear on the climb. He's in the town of Mende.
Well, that was a superb move. Laurent Jalabert, Laurent Brochard, in fact, had tried to set the move up for Richard Virenque, but this is the new man who I think will be called very soon the Eagle of the Mountains. He really can fly as soon as the road tilts upwards.
And again, Indurain is going to use his immense strength now to shut down the big time gap that Jalabert has gained today. As Pantani again kicks and tries to go clear, but Alex Zuller this time is after him, and that's why Indurain is taking an interest in action at the front now. He won't allow Zuller any space to move whatsoever. Look at the face of Indurain.
Indurain looks as if he's suffering quite a lot, and the man following him today is Bjarne Riis, the Danish champion. He, in fact, is giving all kinds of everything to stay in contact. The pressure really is on today, and I think the riders of the Tour de France have decided they will really have a go at this climb.
Alain Brochard has gone away, and so too has Pantani, but from the other end of this group, off the front. Marco Pantani just stands on those pedals when the road goes up, and there's nobody can match him, not even Miguel.
Phil, I'm going to try and match him with the Michelin race summary. 141 riders took the start in Saint-Étienne. Team Once went on the attack early in the race to form a breakaway. French hero Laurent Jalabert had at one point a 10-minute lead on the Indurain peloton and was the yellow jersey on the road. The Benestos have closed the gap to save the jersey, but Jalabert has now attacked the break and is on his way to a Bastille Day win. Laurent Jalabert leading the charge up the mountain.
This is now Laurent Jalabert. The big climb for him is over. Shortly it will tip and he'll start to go down. No sign of Bourg-d'Oisans. We don't have a camera back there, so we don't really know where he is, but he hasn't come through the cars either. So Jalabert now could be coasting to what he will see as his finest victory. Look at the speed here, further down the slopes, about 3 kilometers back, in fact, to Marco Pantani. He's got 4 kilometers to go.
And this is dangerous for when we go down to the Pyrenees, you know, because the Tour de France is not over for Marco Pantani. He's got 2 great stages, but Miguel Indurain has decided he is going to put the hammer down too, and he's chasing to try and get up to Marco Pantani. And it looks very much as if Alex Zula was suffering with 1 kilometer to go for the leader, Laurent Jalabert. It looks as if the French are going to be quite happy.
Well, now they can lay to rest Vincent Barteau, the last Frenchman to win on Bastille Day, because now one of the real stars of French cycling, Laurent Jalabert, is about to make amends. The airfield is as far as the eye can see on the plateau there. This is Marco Pantani, continues his ascent. And he knows now he's being chased by a rider who now knows he could be a danger. The yellow jersey of Miguel Indurain, trying to keep Pantani in his sights. Bjorn Ries is hanging on again to Miguel, as he did on the climb of Alpe d'Huez. He only lost 2 seconds, but now it could be the turn of Alex Zula to feel the pain. Zula is cracking, I think, and Bjorn Ries is hanging on.
Well, Indurain is taking every chance that he can to put time between himself and his other rivals. Bjorn Ries just looks over his shoulder a little bit to see what the situation is with Alex Zula. But today, Indurain is using Pantani as a hare in the front of him. He's chasing him down, but further up the mountain, this is the man who's done the ride of the day. 1 kilometer to go for Laurent Jalabert.
And now he's on to the home straight. It's a long way. It's 850 meters along the home straight, the runway, here on the top of a plateau above the town of Mende. Further down the slope, we got Pantani. Now we're going to see this man break his poker face, and it'll be one for smiles.
Well, while he's going to take a superb victory at the front, it's danger for Alex Zula at the back, because in fact he has been dropped by Miguel Indurain and Bjorn Ries. So it may well be tonight that Laurent Jalabert jumps over his teammate into second place.
Well, time will tell, of course, but right now what this man is thinking about is the 2-arm victory salute, a Frenchman winning on Bastille Day and winning in the green jersey of leader of this race as the most consistent daily finisher, and you can't be more consistent than this. He's going to win the stage on July the 14th. Like all good professionals, he makes sure nobody's there, least of all Bourg-d'Oisans, and now it'll be a moment of glory for Laurent Jalabert. This has been a magical Tour de France for him. He's had the yellow, he's got the green, and now he's got the stage win. Up goes the zip now. He's going to make it look as though he hasn't tried all day. What a great race it's been for him, because he's been in the lead for most of the day today. He's enjoying this now. Who cares about a few seconds, because this will be remembered forever. Laurent Jalabert crosses the line and salutes the crowd, as in the distance you can see the sort of distance he has put between himself and the former champion of Italy, Massimo Bourg-d'Oisans. Even for him, though, this is a great result. Bourg-d'Oisans getting his best ever finish as well on the stage of the Tour de France. So Bourg-d'Oisans comes home in second place, 26 seconds the time gap. And then Dario Bottaro, he will be very pleased with this ride too. Another great finish for him and his best place. He comes in now just over 38, 40 seconds down. But the real hero of this stage, who will be well thanked tonight by Laurent Jalabert, is Melchior Mauri. He made such an effort throughout the stage and still took 4th place. That man today was Superman. Andrea Perron will take 5th place from Motorola, so they get a high finish at last, not quite as high as they wanted, but they still got a result today. So they come along the main runway here on this little mountaintop plateau.
That breakaway completely exploded on the climb. But look at the time gaps too. This time lost in the last 5 kilometers of the day. Andrea Perron finishing in 5th place, around about 1 minute and 25 seconds behind.
Phil, that's the highest finish of any Motorola rider so far in the 95 Tour. Now the question remains, how much time will Laurent Jalabert have taken out of Indurain? Marco Pantani making it look easy. We'll be right back. Well, Laurent Jalabert just doesn't seem to get it. Laurent, you're not supposed to get stronger and faster as the Tour goes on. You kick back, Indurain kicks in.
Miguel Indurain, with his shadow now of Bjarne Riis, has got back to the back wheel of Marco Pantani, an indication to us that he is really worried now about the ability of the Italian climber.
But bear in mind that this kind of climb does suit Miguel Indurain a little bit more, because it's the kind of climb where you can use your power, where you can force the big gear over, and Marco Pantani looks for the races where it's a little bit more of a steeper incline. At the moment, though, Indurain still hasn't got into contention. He still hasn't caught Marco Pantani, but he is doing an excellent job, because behind, Alex Zula has been dropped.
So Zula is the man that's losing just a few seconds at the moment. He cracked on the climb because of the pure speed of the move by Indurain in pursuit of Marco Pantani. Again, we're seeing a demonstration of defiance from Bjarne Riis. This rider, though, Marco Pantani, clearly riding himself into form now. He has all his old confidence back after his win at Alpe d'Huez.
And I have to tell you, after that win in the Alpe d'Huez, he said, don't worry about the Tour de France, it's far from over. I may well be 12 minutes behind, but I'll still be on the podium in Paris, and he may well be, because he's doing an awful lot of damage to the men higher up the standings than he is.
But just look how much work Indurain is putting in here, and he can't close these last few meters to the back wheel of Pantani. That gives you some indication of the power of this man on the climbs. Power for weight ratio, Pantani is a lightweight to Miguel Indurain, but Indurain today, Paul, is dragging the extra weight up, and what a good job he's doing.
He's doing an excellent job. You know, you must bear in mind that this man has to carry more than 50 pounds up the mountain compared to Marco Pantani. Marco Pantani weighs 56 kilos, Miguel Indurain 80 kilos, so it really is difficult for Indurain when it comes to the climbs, but he's managing to do it. There are 2 kilometers to go, and he soon will be on the back wheel of Marco Pantani, but he really has had to dig deep to pull him back today.
Well, unfortunately for Marco, we're now over the top of the hill, and the favour and the pendulum will swing back in favour of Miguel Indurain. He's gone back to the front now. Now, Bjarne Riis is a very good sprinter. We saw him dicing yesterday with Jamaluddin Abdu-Japarov, but then Abdu gave him a little right hook, and that was the end of the sprint for Bjarne Riis. But now Riis might do well here to take the sprint over Miguel Indurain.
But now the clock on the finish line here says 4 minutes, so that means that this evening Laurent Jalabert is going to move into 3rd place in the overall standings, ahead of Bjarne Riis. So what a move today by the Once, but it still depends on what happens to Alex Zula, because he's having all kinds of difficulty on the climb.
Well, we haven't seen a herd of Alex Zula. Now we have the race on the runway here for 6th place. Miguel Indurain has swept up Marco Pantani inside 1.5 kilometers from the finish, and now Big Mig is going to take on Bjarne Riis in the sprint. I don't think we can include Marco Pantani in the sprint, but I think for sure that in fact Bjarne Riis will try to beat Miguel Indurain, and yet they're working to the line to save seconds in both cases.
There was a little sign from Miguel Indurain there just to say, come on, let's work together, because we can put time between myself and Alex Zula. And in fact, I was very surprised to see that Bjarne Riis came forward and gave Indurain a little turn, because so far in this Tour de France, everybody's been sitting in his wheel, and that's the first time somebody's come to their front to help him.
But look at the face of Miguel Indurain. He's really surprised, but he's now taking time away from Alex Zula, and he doesn't care what he finishes as long as he gets that time over Zula. The man is putting all of the effort into these pedals now, and because of that, Bjarne Riis, I think, is going to take the sprint away from him. Riis goes now. Pantani has the cheek to go over Indurain as well. He chases Bjarne Riis. This will be the sprint for 6th place. The clock is counting on the left of our screen there. This has been big time gains by Jalabert today. And look at this. Pantani deserves this. He gets 7th on the line by Riis, followed over, and then comes Indurain. 5 minutes 40 the gap. Alex Zula is coming in. The clock was at 5:40 for Indurain's group. It's going to be a small gain indeed. Zula is in at 5:58.
Phil, that will drop Zula back overall. Marco Pantani, however, gained time today. Now, this little man could give Big Mig some trouble as we head for the Pyrenees in the next couple of days. The field is yet to finish. Well, the peloton rolling across the finish line in the city of Mende. Long way behind Laurent Jalabert, who has won the most symbolic stage for the French in cycling. This is Laurent Jalabert's father, a proud father, 2 generations of athletes on Bastille Day. To see his son standing on the podium as the stage winner in the green jersey for the 3rd straight day. As we mentioned, great day, Bastille Day, an impressive average speed of 26 miles per hour over 140 miles. He took 5 minutes and 41 seconds off of Indurain. Marco Pantani in 6th position. He'll figure impressively over the next couple of days. Lance Armstrong 39th today. One of his teammates, Andrea Perron, proved that Motorola is not ready to throw in the towel just yet. To this man, Miguel Indurain, still the subject and focus of a lot of people. Bjarne Riis, how long can he hold on? Has had an impressive week. Marco Pantani, like a ride in the park. Breathe or something. Abdijaparov lost points in one of those battles among the big war. Laurent Jalabert in green. Overall, Miguel Indurain still leads the Tour by about 2 minutes and 40 seconds over Alex Zula. Jalabert hanging right in there about 3.5 minutes back. Lance Armstrong in 43rd position. Frankie Andreu in 107th. On Bastille Day, Frenchman Laurent Jalabert really rang the bell today. But the leader of the 1995 Tour de France is still Miguel Indurain. The world's greatest cycling event has now traveled 1,349 miles with 910 still to go. Be sure to join us for stage 13 when the Tour begins in Mende and ends in Revel. Coverage begins on ESPN early Sunday morning at 3:30 a.m. Eastern, 11 p.m. Saturday night on ESPN2. For our entire Tour de France team, I'm Adrian Karsten. We'll see you tomorrow.
ESPN's coverage of the 1990s.
When you're the big kid on the block, everyone wants to be like you. Then after a time, some new kid comes to town, hears about the big kid's reputation, and wants to take him on. Word gets around, and suddenly there's a lot of new kids on the block. I can ride my bike faster than you. Oh, yeah? Yeah.
It's a day to celebrate in the south of France as the Tour comes through this corner of the country for the first time with a hometown hero leading the way. Hello, everyone. With Phil Liggett, I'm Adrian Karsten, welcoming you to ESPN's exclusive coverage of the 1995 Tour de France presented by Michelin. Frenchman Laurent Jalabert represents the greatest comeback story in this sport since the days of American Greg LeMond. I mean, Phil, a year ago, he literally could have been killed in one of the worst crashes in the history of this sport. A year to the day later, while wearing the yellow jersey, he crashes again, and now he's won a stage on Bastille Day in front of his father. I mean, this is storybook stuff.
It certainly is, but you know, fate often works in strange ways, especially in the Tour de France. I believe, in fact, if he hadn't been forced to lay off the bike for a long period of time last year, then he wouldn't be the strong man he is this season. Laurent Jalabert was forced to rest. He's come back much more determined, and he's having his best season ever, and what a fairy tale it is.
Yeah, he and his team, Once, are really doing the best they can to make this a street fight for first. For the last 5 years, that's been Banesto's turf. How dare Once come into the neighborhood where the yellow jersey is worn?
But the Once team is a musketeer team. They're all for one and one for all. They don't care who leads on the team, so they attack Indurain with every chance. Okay, Indurain at the moment is leading the Tour, but by the smallest margin ever at this stage of a Tour de France since 1991. I believe if the Once boys sent a chink in his armor, they'll go for him.
It's been a long time since Miguel Indurain and Banesto let a man build up a lead like Jalabert had yesterday.
These days on the Tour are some of the toughest. You got to make your hay while the sun shines. Stage 12 was another one that favored Lance Armstrong. On a breakaway, he went for broke on the first steep climb, took second in the bonus, then fell back. 15 miles into the race, Laurent Jalabert and Dario Bottaro began a breakaway that would last all day. Banesto, doing their best to protect Indurain, found themselves chasing down Team Once. They also found they couldn't do it alone. Approaching the summit of Côte des Charpals, Jalabert and teammate Melchior Maury were at the front of what had become a five-man lead group. A Motorola rider, Andrea Perrone, not Lance Armstrong, was one of the leaders over the mountain. But then Indurain, setting the pace for the peloton, decided it was time to try and reclaim his turf, or at least some of it. Jalabert sensed Miguel's move and really kicked it up the final climb. Bottaro tried to hang on.
And that is the attack we expected. It looks to me as though Bourg-d'Oisans, no, it's the Gaby's rider, Bottaro, has gone after him. So look at this, he's sat on the back ever since the break started. Now he's chasing Jalabert.
He's having a great deal of difficulty getting to the wheel of Laurent Jalabert, but the other riders have just been blown away by the attack of Laurent Jalabert. He knew this was his climb, and I feel fairly sure that he's been to check it out beforehand, because he too rode the midi-leave, as did Miguel Indurain. He has chance now to look over his shoulder, and he sees that Bottaro cannot get into contention. He can't close the gap on flying Laurent Jalabert.
5.5 minutes later, Marco Pantani, looking fresh from his conquer of L'Alpe d'Huez, gave us a preview of the Pyrenees, followed by Zula and Indurain. They came up the mountain. Jalabert became a hero.
And now it'll be a moment of glory for Laurent Jalabert. This has been a magical Tour de France for him. He's had the yellow, he's got the green, and now he's got the stage win. Up goes the zip now. He's going to make it look as though he hasn't tried all day. What a great race it's been for him, because he's been in the lead for most of the day today. He's enjoying this now. Who cares about a few seconds, because this will be remembered forever. Laurent Jalabert crossing the line and salutes the crowd.
5:40 behind Jalabert, Pantani, Indurain, and a charging Rees finished the 140 miles. This is a moment this man will never forget. The emotion of a Frenchman finishing first in front of his family. Overall, Jalabert, with that huge breakaway, took more than 5.5 minutes out of Indurain's lead in the Tour. Behind teammate Alex Zula, followed by Bjarne Riis. The third Once in the top five, Melchior Maury. Americans Lance Armstrong, 43rd, Frankie Andreo, 107th. Little boys are still looking up to the big kid on the block, but there's some new kids in town, making one American wonder if this race is really over.
A couple days ago, I probably would have thought so, but now, I mean, I think Indurain still has a pretty good grasp on it. You know, I mean, he still has the time trials where he can take a couple more minutes. The big mountains, I don't think anybody's really going to drop him, but they're definitely going to make it difficult on him. And he's, I mean, as you can see, he's going through his team, he's using them all up quickly. But that's the Tour. Everybody's racing. You'll see today, I'm sure, from the gun, it's going to be going again.
One of those going again today is Lance Armstrong, hoping maybe he can come up with what one of the Once boys did yesterday. He knows that for the first time in 5 years, there's a team as good or better than Banesto. Here's Paul.
That was an absolutely superb move yesterday by the Once squad. I don't think it was pre-planned. I think Laurent Jalabert just wanted to win on Bastille Day. But look at the damage it did. Second overall is Alex Zula. Third overall is Laurent Jalabert. Fifth overall is Melchior Maury. But really, I think they'll take a back seat today. They'll let the other teams in this Tour de France, teams like Polti, who still have 9 riders and no victory to take home with them, go into the action. The Once boys are going to take a back seat. I really believe that, because tomorrow they go into the terrain where they believe that Miguel Indurain is vulnerable, the Pyrenees.
Paul, Melchior Maury, Indurain's former teammate, may be sharing some old secrets with Once, but current teammate Thomas Davy isn't worried.
No, because Miguel is tranquil, no problem, no problem.
Miguel's tranquil, no problem, but Tony Rominger said he saw Indurain nervous, uneasy for the first time this morning. Well, there are 134 riders left in the peloton, and they are pointed south. Today we leave the Lozère region, and we go 150 miles from hills and pine trees into Mediterranean heat. This is the final stage before we see the Pyrenees. A lot of winding climbs that will wear a lot of these riders down and wear them out before they arrive 150 miles later in the town of Revel. Well, just as yesterday, the peloton exploded early. 4 riders broke away at the 24-mile mark in international class, as a matter of fact. Hernan Buena Hora, the Colombian who had a great day 2 days ago. Bruno Cengliata, Sergei Uchikov. And look who's moving up to the front in red, white, and blue, Lance Armstrong. You may remember he won a stage back in 1993, but Lance has never finished more than 12 stages of the Tour de France. Over the 150 miles, there are 2 bonus sprints. The first one at 42 miles in. And coming up the road, it looks like Lance Armstrong is serious about his effort today. He'll lead across the finish line. Chengli out a second, Uchikov third. This is the first sprint Lance has won this year. Lance, the eyes of Texas, your home state, are upon you, as are the other 49. You just keep your eyes on the finish line, okay?
ESPN's coverage of the 1995 Tour de France is presented by Michelin, because so much is riding on your tires. We are approximately 112 miles into today's Stage 12, and there's reason to have some high hopes for American Lance Armstrong. He continues to make tracks in a breakaway he's been a part of for the last 88 miles. Now, their lead is over 15 minutes at this point, and he started the day barely in the top third of the Tour overall. So this move could really pay off, Phil.
Well, this is the move I think many Americans have been waiting for. A good attack by Lance Armstrong. He's joined the right group today, I think, because at the moment the lead is up to around about 17 minutes on the field. This breakaway going today right out at the start of the stage, coming down to Revel, and Armstrong always in the action. He was third over the small climb of the Côte de Chanac, which is at 21 kilometers. That's around 12.5 miles. The breakaway began to establish itself. These are the riders we're looking at now. Bruno Kengialta, Hernan Buenahora, Lance Armstrong and Sergei Uchikov. And there is the latest gap now, 18 minutes and 5 seconds. Just to complete the story of the day, at 67 kilometers at the first sprint of the day at Rivière-sur-Tarn, Armstrong was the winner there ahead of Kengialta and Uchikov. They were then leading by 6 minutes and 30 seconds. Onto another small climb, the Côte de Rojol. That was a fourth category hill, 87 kilometers into the day, about 55 miles. Kengialta, Armstrong, Uchikov, the order over the top. They were now up to 10 minutes in front. Onto the Côte de Terre at 101 kilometers, something like 63 miles covered. It was Buenahora, Uchikov, Armstrong and Kengialta. Then we've just gone over the top of the Col de Sillé, 148 kilometers into today's stage. That's about 75, 80 miles. Kengialta was the leader there. Armstrong right behind him. Uchikov, Buenahora. The bunch was at 17:20, and we're now heading onto the climb of the Côte de Bel Air into the 180 kilometer point. And Paul, the breakaway is now up to 18 minutes.
Well, it's not too surprising because none of these men are a threat in the overall standings to Miguel Indurain. But I have to say I'm not too surprised either by the move by Armstrong. You know, a couple of years ago when he won his first stage in the Tour de France, it was the day after his teammate Max Chiandri had almost won a stage. In fact, he'd been in a long breakaway and missed out. And exactly the same thing happened yesterday. Andrea Piron was in that break of 6 riders, and towards the end, he ended up finishing 5th out of 6, and Armstrong reacts to that kind of thing.
Well, it's good to see now Lance feeling a little bit better. And here is another rider abandoned today. This is Simony, who's gone out. He was in a breakaway the other day. And some bad news for British viewers as well, because Sean Yates is abandoned. He's a Motorola rider, of course. He has stopped today. We don't yet know why, but he abandoned. He was the first one to go today. He was quickly followed by Pavel Tonkov, the fine Russian rider and winner of the Tour of Switzerland, and then Thierry Laurent went, and now we've seen Simony has gone. So there's 4 more riders out today on the route to Tour de France, and so the pressure, and I think largely the heat down here, Paul, is now picking out the weaker ones.
It really is a tough stage today. You know, the temperature's climbing up to around about 35 degrees Celsius, but around here in these areas it really appears, and I remember racing here in races like the Midi-Libre, and it doesn't seem to me as if there's an awful lot of oxygen, and when the temperature gets up, it is very, very difficult country to race in.
Now, you mentioned the Midi-Libre there, Paul. That, in fact, is a preparation race for the Tour de France. It's not quite as hard as a Tour. It's a shorter race in days, but they go over some of the big climbs, don't they?
They do. It's a very tough race. It's only about 6 days long, but, you know, the man that we're looking at now in the yellow jersey, in fact, used it this year as his preparation for the Tour de France, and on the way, he actually won it.
And until this year, of course, Miguel Indurain has always used the Tour of Italy, which is a similar distance to the Tour de France, but until this year was never seen as hard as the Tour de France. And I suppose now that taking part this year in the Tour, it's not as hard. But indeed, it is a hard race, and Indurain deciding it was too tough a preparation for the Tour de France this year, and he did choose the smaller races, the Midi-Libre and the Dauphiné Libéré. They're two races in the centre of France, and if you ride well in those, it usually confirms your selection for the teams in the Tour.
Another interesting point in why Miguel Indurain actually changed to ride those two races. But in fact, the Tour of Italy was a week earlier, so the gap between the Tour of Italy and the Tour de France was regarded as being too much, and he chose the two French races because they were exactly the same distance in time away from the Tour de France as his preparation had been before.
So the brave men who have prepared to go out today and sweat under the hot sun have now got themselves a lead approaching 18 minutes and 30 seconds. Bruno Kengialta is the rider in the lead. As if you've been following the Tour de France with us here on ESPN, you will remember that it was Bruno Kengialta who dropped back to try and drag Evgeny Berzin back into the group in the mountains of the Alps, and when he was too tired, Kengialta sprinted back into the group and finished well. He's coming through a good tour. Berzin, of course, has abandoned, but this group is well clear, and there's still quite a way to go.
Quite a way to go, Phil, but we wonder with the lead that big if they can hold on to it and take it into the finish. Back with more Stage 12 in just a moment. At mile number 112, on the climb to the summit of the Côte de Bel Air, Lance Armstrong is 1/4 of this lead group, 18 minutes ahead of the peloton. Armstrong is in a developmental phase of his career. He's only 23. He admits he's made some mistakes in this tour. He's aware of the pressure there is on him to excel, some of it self-imposed. Years of age seems awfully young for a man to have experienced the burdens of success, but as this American cyclist reflects on his professional career, 1994 stands apart. See, last year, the world of cycling knew who Lance Armstrong was.
I wasn't the same. I was not given a lot of freedom in 94. I was a stronger person. I was a better bike rider. But I was viewed differently from the other professionals. And that was frustrating.
2 years ago, success came easily. A stage victory in his first Tour de France, a 3-race series win earning a $1 million bonus, and a stunning effort in capturing the World Championship in Norway. Lance Armstrong was making his mark while others were marking him.
The things I did in 93, the moves that I made to win the races wouldn't have worked in 94, and they won't work now. I can't sneak up on anybody. They don't let me go anywhere. Whereas in 93, I had a very long leash. In 94, there was no leash. I mean, they had the hand inside the collar. It was tough. I was ready just to do a couple more years and sort of move on to something else. But
let's give it up for the home motor of the cycling team!
Recently, excitement and energy have replaced any second thoughts. Lance's convincing win in the 1995 Tour de Pont has renewed his determination.
I mean, I realize I have the body, I have the drive, I have the team, I have the support. I'm good at it, and I can make a great career out of this. It's something that I can do for, if I wanted, I could do for 10 more years.
Secure in body, secure in mind. This 23-year-old can now set and strive for new goals, including going the distance in cycling's greatest event.
I fully expect to finish. And I think that the team expects me to finish, the sponsor expects me to finish, the fans expect me to finish. Not that it's completely easy, but certainly I don't think it's going to be something that's going to kill me.
Maybe not kill you, but even Lance admits this event proves grueling at best, perhaps more so than any other.
I just don't see anything that's harder than the Tour de France. And I'm not trying to dog any other professional athletes. I mean, I certainly don't want to step in the ring with Mike Tyson or get hit by Charles Haley. But I don't think they want to do the Tour de France either.
Lance Armstrong, a young American rider with a lot of potential in our Coca-Cola racer profile. The youngest ever American road racing champion, the youngest ever world champion, right here showing he has to learn how to win potentially his second stage first, and maybe someday the Tour de France. Now the descent down the Côte de Bel Air. Lance Armstrong still in the lead group, has been ever since 24 miles in. Their lead about 15 minutes. Phil?
So they're now coming up towards the top of the climb, and this is the main field. Over the top, of course, many minutes ahead. We've had Kengialta leading Uchikov and Armstrong, but the main field are now over the top of the Côte de Bel Air. So they've done 180 kilometers, and now the field are going to have to really get down to things. Here's the final time check before we take a break. It's 15 minutes and 2 seconds. My goodness me, they've got some work to do yet.
"74 miles into this stage 12, the main field taking advantage of a chance on the flats to close the gap on that four-man lead group that includes Lance Armstrong.
The gap continues to come down. It's 30 minutes and 50 seconds, the last check. But you know, Paul, I don't think that is any like fast enough. We're heading now towards the 219th kilometer.
It isn't at all, but the problem is that one or two teams would like to chase. They come to the front. We've seen the Telecom team and also the Novel team of Jamaluddin Abdul-Jabbar come to the front with 3 or 4 riders, but the big problem is no teams have got a full complement of riders to be able to chase this group down.
Well, the Novel team have come off the front of this chase group now, trying to bridge that gap to the 4 men out there, and largely because Abdul-Jabbar was in a spot of trouble earlier on.
I think he just went to the back to get some drinks because all his team were actually up at the front of the race, and that's why Abdu was down at the back. But you see now the teams have switched off. It's the Banesto team again at the front, and they have no desire to chase. If the 4 riders at the front finish with 20 minutes lead, they don't care at all. They're just going to leave it up to the teams of the sprinters if they want to try and get back into contention, but I think they've left it too late today.
Well, the men who have set the race alight today, Sergei Uchikov from the Polti team, Bruno Kengialta from Gay-Wiz, Hernan Buenohora from the Kelme team, and Lance Armstrong from Motorola. They were the men that took the tentative out at the start today, and now there is a chance that they are going to stay away.
Well, Phil, I think everyone knows by now about the ESPN Sports Zone. We got to the finish line today and our email box was full. Question of the day, where have all the early stage winners gone? Well, home for the most part, primarily because of crashes, this pace, and exhaustion. Mario Cipollini won 2 of the first 5 stages. He abandoned on Wednesday. Alex Zula, who won stage 9, is second to Indurain. We know where he is. Here's an update on the rest of the stage winners. Keep those computer cards and letters coming. Lance looking pretty good in this stage, right, Phil?
Yes, if Lance Armstrong is hoping to get Motorola that stage win today, and he's the man that they will put all their faith into as the leader of that team, then he's going to have to watch out for, I think, Bruno Kengialta. He, for me, is the danger man.
Kengialta is a man who certainly is on form, and I must admit, I've said it a couple of times, the performance I really thought was superb was when he waited for Berzin in the mountains. He tried to pace him back into the main field. When he could see that Berzin wasn't able to follow, he accelerated and actually caught up the group of Miguel Indurain again. That shows me that he has a great amount of form.
Well, he's no hand at the Tour de France, but he hasn't won a stage in it since 1991. Now, we've got riders trying to get livened up a little bit here to create a chase. The Brasilia team, marked by Lampre, trying to go clear, and this might incite the riders to a little bit of action.
This looks very much to me like the shape of Vladimiro Belli on the back from the Lampre squad, but this is an ideal situation for the 4 men in the breakaway because these small groups that are going to attack and try to get clear, they won't be able to pull into the lead that was being built up by those 4 leaders.
David Perona is the rider on the move for Lampre. We haven't seen him on the attack, in fact, since this race began, and Frankie Andreu, who is the Motorola rider there, marking the attack of the 2.
Andrea's teammate Lance Armstrong still about 12 minutes ahead of that chase group in the original 4-man breakaway. Something you may not have known, Lance Armstrong sponsors a Little League baseball team back in his hometown of Plano, Texas. Another team in Texas, the Rangers, continue to fight for first place in the West Sunday night against the Boston Red Sox. That's Sunday Night Baseball on ESPN, live at 7:56 Eastern Time. More from the Tour de France in just a moment. We've said a number of times that the Tour is an event you must learn how to win, and it's almost as if we're watching the maturation on the road of this rider. Phil?
Now, Armstrong, well, he's had an up and a down Tour de France this year, but he has told us that this one he is going to finish, and it looks as though he's finishing it on a strong note, because His last 2 tours, he's won a stage, yes, but he's never gone over the mountains. Well, he's tasted the Alps now. He had literally his ups and downs there because he was knocked off by a photographer and had to remount on the climb of Alpe d'Huez. But now we're heading for the Pyrenees, a different type of mountain. He'll have to have a different type of strategy. But I think he will make Paris this year.
I think he will. I had a quick chat with him this morning in the Village Depart, the area where all the riders assemble before the start of the stages. I said, how are things, Lance? He said, oh, I'm a little bit tired, but you know, the last couple of days he has a face of concentration on him, as if he really did want to do something. He realized that these 3 stages between the mountains were stages that he could take.
Well, it's the big climb to Gouzet-Neige tomorrow. It is a big climb too, and it's a very hard climb indeed. Indurain knows that the Onse team are waiting to hit him from every corner. And of course the Gavris team will be along as well. And what about Tony Rominger, the Maffei rider, who seems to be just hanging on in there and holding a place in the top 6. But the man who impressed us most, well, not most, but certainly the man who impressed us certainly was Ivan Gotti in the Alps, and he might well ride well in the Pyrenees. And what about Pantani?
Well, that man is definitely going to try and blow something up, you know, because he's said he definitely wants to get to Paris on the podium, and he may well be 12 minutes behind still, but he can do an awful lot of damage, especially on the stage finish tomorrow, which is a mountaintop up to Gouzet-Neige.
In the Pyrenees, Paul, where Miguel Indurain trains. That's where we're headed tomorrow for stage 14. You've described the 100 miles of climbs you'll be able to see early Monday morning at 3 a.m. Eastern on ESPN.
Famous climbs, probably the most revered climbs of any Tour de France. They were the first mountains climbed by these great men. They used to call these riders the convicts of the road, because in the old days they used to raid all the shops on the street and run off with the food and drink without paying. But that is no longer allowed on the Tour de France.
Well, it's not so bad nowadays. The teams have slightly bigger budgets than they did in those days, so I think they actually get fed pretty well in the evening.
Yeah, that's true. Yes, nowadays all they really have to do is pedal their bikes. Everything else is done for them. But in the old days, they even had to repair their own machines. 13:45, they're making very little progress at all now. These 4 riders here very shortly are going to be able to think about how they are going to plan their strategy to win the day. This is the chase group, and this is the time check on these 3 riders of 13:45, so it's even further back now to the main field. And there it is, 14:45 back to the main field. And in fact, Frankie Andreu, I think, Paul, is still making no effort to help on that chase.
I think now that they've got a good gap over the main field, it's about time that Frankie Andreu started to help them and just pushed it a little bit further ahead. At the front, though, these riders starting to consider what they are going to do to try and escape and to try and take the stage victory. And it's going to be very difficult on that final climb, exactly what to do.
Paul, that final climb coming up. What will Lance Armstrong do? Well, we know that he loves a steep climb right before the finish. We'll be back. You know, Phil and Paul and I started this day describing the Tour de France, well, as a street fight for a stage victory. This 4-man gang has bullied the main field all day, Paul.
These 4 riders have got 13 minutes lead with less than 20 kilometers to go now, and it's almost impossible for them to be caught.
And Lance Armstrong there keeping up the tempo nicely now as Sergei Uchikov brings through for Polte. Full complement of riders on that squad, but they've still not had a result in this race at all. In fact, they haven't really taken part in the action on a daily basis. And this man has impressed us ever since we saw him in action down into Saint-Étienne, where he was in that stage-long breakaway. So now we see these 3 men, the 4 men with Armstrong sitting around the back. 12 kilometers to go now for these 4. And they know now they're not going to be caught, but they will have this climb to come just before the end. It comes at the 237th kilometer, which leaves them just about 8 kilometers or 5 miles to go once they're over the top of it. They will have a dress rehearsal over some of the roads because they do a certain stretch of the course twice.
Phil, let's set up the final miles with the Michelin race summary. 134 riders took the start in Mende, facing 153 hot miles in stage 13. American Lance Armstrong and 3 others jumped away from the field at the 24-mile mark, and racing a pace half an hour ahead of schedule, they are now 13 minutes ahead of the field with just under 8 miles to go. All right, we profiled Lance Armstrong, the American, a little bit earlier. Phil, young riders like him cannot afford to become impatient and make their move to win too early.
And Lance Armstrong is now beginning to get a little bit agitated here. I think he's anxious to try and break up this group. They've still got to go around a small climb before they plunge back down to the finish in Revel. And there is Lance, and going through Sergei Uchikov. And behind him is Hernan Buenahora, and the man in the blue, number 14 there, is Bruno Kengialta. We feel Kengialta is the danger man, and Armstrong, I think that's why, Paul, he is now following him in the line.
He's dropped to the back here. You know, the riders will have studied the route map. Normally a team manager the night before a race will actually plan it out on a map, a detailed map of the area, and they will know by looking at the profile how difficult this final circuit is going to be. They will have talked about it, discussed the tactics, and I know that Armstrong likes a difficulty towards the end of a race. He likes something to use as a launch pad because he loves to win on his own, and that may be what he's thinking about. But you know, Bruno Kengialta is a professional for a long time, and he's a very intelligent rider, and he'll be waiting for a move like that.
Well, there's absolutely no chance now that the main field will come back as we pass under the 10 kilometers to go banner for the 4 leaders. In between there are 3 chasers, but they too are in double figures behind, and they're Marco Milesi, David Perona, and Frankie Andreu, also of Motorola, but he is still playing the policeman and is not working with either Perona or Milesi, and I feel he would make better progress if he did start to work, because they're only a minute plus in front of the main field. The main field, as always at this stage of the race, is being led at a casual jaunter by the Benesto boys.
I think you make a few more friends as well if you work with those 2 riders that he's with, because you know you need friends in the main field, you need friends when you go into the mountains just to help you get through some of those big stages. But one thing Frankie Andreu, I think, will be a little bit saddened about today is the fact that his friend and teammate Sean Yates is withdrawn with that tendonitis, because they used to spend a lot of time together in the mountains.
Well, we're all sad about that, because Sean Yates never complains. He's such a great professional. So if he has pulled out, then I should imagine he feels the injury is pretty serious. Well, we've just gone past the 2 kilometers to go on the climb here, so it's not a very long climb, even though they've given it a 3rd category ranking. There's Jean-Marie Leblanc, the director of the Tour de France, a man that knows what it's like to ride the bike too, because he rode 2 Tours de France when he was on the old BIC sponsored team. They were the colours in which Luis Ocaña won the Tour de France back in 1973. There we're seeing the time gap, 16 minutes and 40 seconds, I thought I read there, Paul, back to this group here. So they're losing ground.
They are doing, but they have no intention of chasing. They're quite happy to let those riders in front have their freedom. But at the moment, it was interesting to note that in that front group, Buenahora had been at the front, and there is the attack. That Buenahora was at the front. He dropped back and waited for the other riders to take over the pace setting, and he tried to go straight away, but they were waiting for that move.
Well, of course they were. He's the climber in the race. This is the last climb of the day, and it's not as steep as we appear to have thought, because it's only about 1 kilometer to the summit now, and Buenahora, almost a tentative move there, but they were stuck to him like glue. And it was rather interesting to see they all went at the same time to grab him and haul him back in.
Well, these 4 rides at the moment are going to be extremely nervous. In fact, it's becoming a little bit of a sprint race at the moment. They're looking at each other at the back, in the back of the main field there. That was Bo Hamburger from the TVM squad trying to get clear, but that is over 16 minutes behind the 4 leaders at the moment. Miguel Indurain just letting anybody attack who wants to, but he won't let Zulu go. He won't let Rominger go. And now Uchikov has gone with 1 kilometer to go to the climb.
So the next move from Uchikov, we've seen Uchikov's team manager up here a number of times, and now he's probably said you've got to try 1 kilometer from the top of the climb. Lance Armstrong straight on him here, and that's a good move, and he looks cool.
And in fact, behind race radio telling me that in fact the 2 riders, Buenahora and Kengialta, are watching each other. They don't want to make the move first, and these 2 riders have got a great lead.
And a great move by Lance Armstrong, Paul. Maybe the one he's been waiting for since 1993. We'll find out when we come back. Armstrong was the last American to win a stage in the Tour de France. That was 1993. Now, here he is trying to get position on Sergei Uchikov.
And they've got the gap on the climb as they go up towards the summit here of the last small climb of the day. Lance Armstrong keeping an eye on exactly what is happening around him, but he could now work with Sergei Uchikov and it could go.
Well, that was a superb move. You know, he waited for somebody to attack. He knew the attack was going to come on this climb, but what does surprise me as well is that Kengialta waited to see if Buenahora would move. Buenahora was the first man to attack, so obviously he used an awful lot of energy, so Kengialta should have gone straight away without any kind of a pause.
But this happens so many times. This is why the sport is so good. Riders are affected by other things other than pure strength. They're now 8 kilometers or 5 miles from the finish. Uchikov is along with Lance Armstrong. They really have got to keep going together now because they'll dive off this mountain. And before you know it, they'll be in the streets of Revel.
Well, I think you said that because Lance Armstrong really is reveling in the glory at the moment. He's so happy to be at the front of the Tour de France. He had a very hard time in the mountains. He tried to stay with the leaders. He tried to get across to Alex Zula, but at the moment, this really is his terrain. When this man feels he can get a victory, he just wants to go for it.
Well, that's where we are, 237.5 kilometers done today of the 245 on the menu. And what a long, hot day this has been for everybody in the Tour de France. It has been a real scorcher.
And Armstrong is not afraid of the heat. He comes from Austin in Texas and loves the heat. And it may well be today that the heat has been on his side. But when they get to the finish, a two-man sprint is always a very dangerous thing. It's a scary thing because if you make a mistake, even Max Chiandri a couple of days ago knew that he was stronger and faster than Buenahora in the sprint in Saint-Étienne. But he always felt up until the last moment that he could make a crazy mistake.
And just look at this crowd way over in the hillside above the little town of Revel. The cycle sport is so popular here, the British flag flying there too. And Armstrong not contesting the Banner's prize for the King of the Mountains, going calmly over in second place ahead of Uchikov. These two riders are now going to combine. Now, this is a difficult one. I think Armstrong would be the better sprinter.
Well, he should be. He's an extremely strong man, and I've told you before, he may not be a pure sprinter, but he will fight with energy. He'll fight with his courage. He'll fight with everything he's got to get around this man from Russia, Sergei Uchikov. But the two of them have to work together because, don't forget, there are still two riders behind. It's about 150 meters at the moment, but still I feel that Bruno Kengialta made a drastic mistake in not attacking straight away once they saw these two riders move clear.
Well, it didn't take an expert to know that the attacks would come on the last climb of the race. It was the only place where you could break up the leaders. And Kengialta seems to be out of it. We're not too sure where he is because our cameras are staying looking at the two leaders, but as far as we know, he is about 25 seconds back.
Well, Armstrong looked across at then to check out the face of Sergei Uchikov as the race comes across. Information at the moment telling me that these two riders are in the lead and the gap at the moment is around about 20 seconds.
Well, they're saying, in fact, that the gap is now 35 seconds. And that is big enough, I would think, for these two to decide at this stage of the Tour de France together. Armstrong going down the mountain now with Sergei Uchikov. Remember, these riders were already in the lead by the 38-mile point today when Armstrong won the sprint there. Now, a different type of rider called for here now. Great skill on what are always tricky descents here in the area of the Tarn.
Well, this is one thing that Armstrong does like. He loves to go downhill quickly. He's learned an awful lot from his compagnon de route, as they say in French, Sean Yates. But at the moment, he's taking an awful lot of risks on these corners. And when you go into these corners, sometimes it is a little bit dangerous because the tar starts to melt and you could lose it. Armstrong's not worried, though. He wants to stay at the front so that he can see where all the danger is.
Paul Uchikov has never won in the Tour de France. He has won in tours of Italy and Spain, so some of that danger may come in the final 3 miles. Lance Armstrong need not worry about the action behind him. It's the one man dead ahead, Sergei Uchikov. Paul, as they continue toward the finish line, they're doing the same thing they've done all day.
These two riders still working well together. They realize that behind them the two chasers are still 35 seconds down, but that could all change if they start to look at each other and start to try and play the cat and mouse game that Bruno Kengialta played before. You know, they've got to keep going, but in 6 or 7 minutes time we will know who is going to win this stage of the Tour de France.
Well, neither of these teams have won a stage of this year's event. Certainly Armstrong has won a stage in a previous Tour de France 2 years ago when he was the world champion soon afterwards, in a magical year for him. But he has done so much so early on in a young professional career. He has really went to the top before he started to learn the sport. But now, this year, he is learning how to ride the Tour de France. He has witnessed every emotion in this great race, and he certainly will have done just that if he wins the stage now. The kilometres are flying by as they descend at this climb right into Revel. Inside 4 kilometres now, and again, Armstrong wants to see the way down first.
And it was amazing to watch them go down that descent. You know, don't forget that the roads in the Tour de France are closed, and they can use the whole apex of the corners. They use as much of the road as possible because they don't want to slow down at all. And the riders read the corners from looking at the way the land lies, by looking at the way the trees are, and they know when or not they have to brake going into these kind of corners.
Well, this is where they rejoin the race route where they came straight through not long ago now. And you know, I'm thinking the main field won't have come down this stretch of road yet. They're still behind these riders because the main field has to do the lap, which includes that climb. But we haven't run into the bunch, which is always a help for a commentator. The riders now on the straights heading up towards Revel, and Armstrong has done more than his share of work in this breakaway, but now he is making Uchikov take the lead.
Well, Uchikov is a superb rider when it comes to that solitary effort. He's a superb time trialist, but he's not sure at the moment. He looks over his shoulder as they go under the 4-kilometre banner. They realize, in fact, that was the 3-kilometre banner, so these riders really are flying along.
Inside 2 miles to the line now, and Armstrong is not slowing down at all. There's no cat and mouse between these two. There can't be. Otherwise, the two riders behind will be straight back up to them. They're trying to judge the effort at the front without making too much now because they want to save something for the sprint. They're going to have to decide now how they're going to outmaneuver one another when they make what is a right turn towards the finish, and then it's a very difficult approach to the finish, but then you see it.
It is difficult. There is a couple of nasty corners as a first right-hander and then a left-hander into the finishing straight, and they can't start to play cat and mouse. Uchikov caught out there because he wanted Armstrong to come by him on the right-hand side, but Armstrong, as soon as the pace slowed, lifted it, came to the front. He doesn't want to start playing around for a position in the sprint until we get a little bit closer to the line, because don't forget, we've got 2 riders chasing, Bruno Kengialta, and in fact, Uchikov now wants the cars out of the way so he can look back down the straight there to see what the situation is, where the other 2 riders are.
So after a tranquil day in the Tour de France, we're now reaching those nervous moments of desperation in the last couple of kilometres of the stage. 2 to go. They're under the banner. They're almost inside the final mile to the finish now. Armstrong no longer anxious to go and help Sergei Uchikov with the pacemaking.
Armstrong looking good. He's just checking that everything's in place. He's looking down at his gears to make sure he doesn't make a mistake when we come into the final kilometre. He looks still nervous enough to me. He looks very lucid. He looks as if he's got the ability to respond, the ability to explode, which is what he needs to do when he comes into that last kilometre, when he sees the finishing straight and he sees the banner across the line in front of him.
Well, they'll make the right turn very shortly now. Then they will see the 1 kilometre to go kite hanging across the bridge, which the Tour de France puts up every day in the Tour de France. Sergei Uchikov, to me, looks as though he's under a little bit of pressure here now just to hang on to Lance Armstrong. So if I was a betting man, I'd go for the Motorola rider, because Armstrong is itching to get at him, I think.
Well, he's got the twitch definitely every time he can. He gets out of the saddle, he's using his arms, feeling for his responses, trying to see how good he is at the moment, but he knows that when they get closer to the finish, Uchikov is going to try and outfox him. He's going to try and outwit him, and it's going to be a very difficult sprint, but Armstrong will be getting power from his confidence, the fact that he's won a stage in the Tour de France before, and that's what he was waiting for. That's the red kite, the flamme rouge. 1 kilometre to go.
1 kilometre to go, and the sharp right-hander is not very far away, and Uchikov might try to go early here. He knows the power of the finish of Lance Armstrong in a small group like this. He knows he may not be able to match up to that power. Armstrong. Now there's the right-hander, but it's not the last turn before the finish. And Armstrong now in the front and doesn't want to be there. So he now looks over to Uchikov to see if he'll take the lead.
He's forced Uchikov into the first position on the road. There's the left-hander. It won't be very long now before they can see at the end of this big long straightaway the Coca-Cola banner across, which signifies the end of the stage.
And it's going to be about now where Sergei Uchikov realizes he made a mess of that. He shouldn't have gone round the corner into the lead, because Lance has him where he wants him now, and he's not going to come by him again until he goes for the gears and gives him just about all the speed he has left in those legs after what has been a tremendously long day in the saddle for all of the breakaway. Uchikov is going to ride close to the barriers on the left, so Armstrong must come over on his right shoulder, give him only one way. Armstrong now begins to make his move. Uchikov goes immediately, but goes right to the centre of the road. Armstrong holding the back wheel of Uchikov. Very shortly Armstrong is going to have to kick, but I don't think he's got it. Uchikov has everything. Uchikov takes it on the line. Armstrong will be very, very annoyed about that, but he never had it on the line.
Probably because he may have made a mistake, Phil, in waiting too long to sprint to the finish. A little bit further back, though, Frankie Andreu is going for his third top 10 finish of the 95 Tour. The first opportunity for two Americans to finish in the top 10 this year.